and on your mobile. This is Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos.
Calling all music and book lovers, fans of fiction and art enthusiasts. Something is brewing in Kaduna.
Kabafest.
Don't miss the Kaduna Book and Art Festival special on Radio Now.
It's like a revival.
Books,
When writing The 7 Necessary Sins, did you know it would connect with women globally?
He has this new book, People Live Here. It's an amazing book.
poetry,
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. Cancer had been at the edge of my throat.
But once the Ayiridi dies down, the next sound you are going to be hearing is Gas Yakari.
and music.
So just do it and do what I do.
Join Nabila and Stephen from Thursday, May 2nd to Saturday, May 4th from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos.
Every second and every minute, something new has to break.
Triple at the spot. And angry mobs decided to bomb.
Everyone wants to share it, but not everyone wants to dig deep. Now that's where we come in. We bring you the news and go beyond with in-depth conversations and analysis with stakeholders.
I honestly think the
Local that decision-making process, they need to be
GDP is not a good measure of development anyways. We're not there. We need to counter the narrative of the fact that our food does not count. If your food does not count.
We bring you the story within the story, and that's what makes us tick. We are Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos, and we go beyond the news.
Calling all music and book lovers, fans of fiction and art enthusiasts. Something is brewing in Kaduna.
Kabafest.
Kabafest.
Don't miss the Kaduna Book and Art Festival special on Radio Now.
It's like a revival.
Books,
When writing The 7 Necessary Sins, did you know it would connect with women?
People Live Here. It's an amazing book.
poetry,
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. Cancer had been at the edge of my
But
throat.
once the Ayiridi dies down, the next sound you are going to be hearing is Gas Yakari.
and music.
So just do it and do what I do.
Nabila and Stephen Day, May 2nd to Saturday, May 4th from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos.
This is Now Breakfast at the Kaduna Book and Arts Festival.
You're welcome to the special Saturday broadcast on Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. But we're coming to you live from the serene city of Kaduna and the buzzing community that is the Kaduna Book and Arts Festival 2024. It is day 3 of the festival, and we've had conversations on the expectations of society, the importance of the arts, and the need for action in preserving legacy and affecting social change.
Welcome. Our names are Nabila, Usman, and Stephen Imediegwu. Today, Saturday, May the 4th. And, special things because we don't typically broadcast on Saturdays,
No, we
but
don't.
we decided to spice it up a little for you and bring you everything you need for scintillating conversations, something to stimulate, something to engage, something to excite.
Of course, and because it's a special broadcast, our conversations today is not just going to be Nabila and myself. It's we've also got our very own Tomi Olugbemi who will be joining us for the conversations that let you into the conversations that were had yesterday at the Kaduna Book and Arts Festival, and that's going to happen, after we bring you up to speed with what you should expect to hear this morning.
Let's do this morning.
Coming up this morning on Now Breakfast.
We speak with Aaron John, the founder, the African Narrative on Climate Change, as we seek to understand the challenges posed by climate change in Northern
Kabafest has always been a haunt of the creative mind, and they don't come more creative than cartoonists who will be speaking with us about the intersection between the arts and the media.
We will also be speaking with the Director of Arts at the Aisha Ali Yubima, whose panel on the use of the arts to build a lasting legacy in the North yesterday was simply inspired.
And Richard Ali, yes, the Richard you know, who happens to be a poet and managing editor of Jalada Africa. You know him as a lawyer, a social commentator, a general all-round rabble rouser. Well, Richard will be speaking to us on the timeless nature of the arts and reading from his collection.
Kabafest is ever complete without the artistry, the beauty, the sophistication, if you like, of poetry. Today we're going to be speaking with performance artist Deborah Johnson, who will also be performing some of her poetry for us. And of course, the art is going to also feature a conversation with Sumaya Ja'a. She's going to be
Sumaya Ja'a.
Beg your pardon, Sumaya Jae. She's going to be speaking with us about arts and festival curation. She is the creative director of Open Arts.
You can join these conversations and so much more. We're streaming live on YouTube. Go to Radio Now Studio and you can catch a glimpse of what's going on live in Kaduna. And of course, if you are heading out of town, our website has you live and active at www.thisisradionow.com. Simply click on the Listen Live button and you can take us with you wherever you go. You want to send a WhatsApp message? 080968222595. Engage with the conversation on your socials. Hashtag Kabafest 2024. Hashtag Radio Now 953 FM.
It's now time for us.
News and information go around every second. The ones who deliver it and how matter. We give you depth, substance from the real sources.
I made statements in that regard.
There wasn't any agreement between Bashir Machina and Ahmad Lawan.
The DPO, the divisional police officer who is on ground there, went there.
Also giving you a more human angle on the events that matter.
They are not people that live in mansions, but they are people that live within localities, and the people are afraid to.
There's so many issues there in area boys. Then we now went to.
Let's cut the convention and rather have a conversation. Radio Now 95.3 FM, Lagos. We go beyond the news.
Be a part of our online community on Facebook. Like our page on www.facebook.com/This Is Radio Now to join every conversation on air and get up-to-date news information on the go.
You are listening to Nabila Usman and Stephen Imediegwu at Kabafest.
You're welcome back into it. It's the special Saturday edition of Now Breakfast, brought to you live from the serene city of Kaduna and the Kaduna Books and Arts Festival, Kabafest 2024. My name is Stephen Imediegwu, here with my co-host Nabila Usman, and we have our very own Tomi Olugbemi with us in the studio this morning. Tomi, good morning to you.
Morning, Stephen. How are you?
I'm all right. How's Kaduna's weather treating you?
Pretty well, actually. Pretty well. It's been sunny, but not sunny in a horrible way.
You mean not sunny in Lagos? I would drain all the moisture out of you.
Just stop the Lagos slander. You're going back to Lagos.
Both of you are welcome, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. Because as if you've not been living in Lagos with us for the past how many years?
Both of you are welcome, by the way. Look, let's perhaps end the chit chat and get into the serious business. The business of day 2 of Kabafest.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we already gave a sense of the lineup when we had a conversation on the show yesterday. But what we really want to do now is to give a sense of what our favorite pieces were There were conversations around the culture of low expectation, confronting that culture. There were conversations on how to support the arts in building a lasting legacy. We had the book chat with Awanose Odafen. We had the film screening of Rebellion. So these were all the scintillating. I think the only thing I missed was women in leadership in northern Nigeria. That particular panel was so hot.
It was.
It had to be extended by 15 minutes.
It was.
So you know what? Let's do it this way. Tommy, since you're in the hot seat, talk to us about what your favorite moment was. One of your favorite moments.
I mean, as I mentioned yesterday, I was looking forward to the panel you were hosting about supporting the arts in northern Nigeria to have a lasting legacy, and I really thought it was a very insightful conversation, and I thought all the panelists made some really, really important points. I was particularly engrossed by the question about identity, northern identity and legacy, and what that looks like. And I really liked Grace Yakubu's answer. So yeah, that was one of my favorite bits of it all.
So for you who probably missed it, of course, over here, we are all about keeping you up to speed and giving you a sense of conversations. We actually took a bit of this favorite part that Tomi identified. Here's Grace Yakubu speaking on legacy and identity and how that supports the arts in establishing it here in northern Nigeria.
There for everyone to see. What I mean is, you can tell by what we wear, you can tell by how we speak and our food. But sometimes I feel like, for me personally, I feel like the gift that I have as my identity as a northerner is when I left the north. So I was born and raised in Kano, and I stayed there for 27 years till I moved to the south. While I observed a lot and I knew we were beautiful, everything we had was beautiful, I appreciated it. Well, when I was in school, I wanted to be hip hop and stuff. But when I went back to Lagos, that was when I realized, wait, what I have back home is really, really unique. But somehow, in the movies that we've presented, yes, we do movies, Kannywood and stuff, but I don't necessarily personally see that we explore the culture in a way that, for instance, the Yoruba movies now, they're all over Netflix, where it's a story, but it's within the culture, the identity. You can't miss what they're trying to tell you and show you. Here we have, I'm sorry, like we've danced, we've sung, we've loved and stuff. Can we tell deep stories about our leaders, Tafawa Balewa, like real stories? People have no idea how many filmmakers coming to the north always have in the last 3-4 years to make films. They come with a whole crew, they come with a whole cast, people that don't even speak out. So now I'm not being tribalistic, but what is wrong that our people can't tell these stories? Yes, I know it goes back to funding, but in our identity, well, the little that you have, just explore a little bit. Just because you're from Kano doesn't mean you can't tell a story of a Kanuri man. It just takes research. So I feel our identity is in our content as well. We as filmmakers or curators should ensure that whatever we're showing a very vast collection of what we are and who we are. So for me as film, our identity is not mistakable, but it's still hidden and it's still managed in a way that we think we're just producing for Kano people and Kaduna people just a little bit. What will it take for you to be so passionate about telling the stories to the whole of Nigeria? If we watch Indian movies and we like Indian movies and we like how they do and stuff, why do you think an Indian person wouldn't want to watch a Kano or a Kannywood movie with details of your culture? So for me, that's what I'm passionate about, to tell stories that kind of explore, not just sitting in the room, but everything that has to do with the North. Again, I'm going to say the filmmaking industry doesn't just need actors and stuff. As a lawyer, you can be an entertainment lawyer. You can create an agency that helps produce or provide actors to people. You can be a financial advisor. You can be an engineer. You can be a production designer that builds sets if you're an architect. So let's just the legacy of contributing to the arts.
So that's Grace Yakubu, right? And from her point, you can identify that she's a filmmaker. Yeah, she talks about I'm particularly interested in how she talks about the people who come into northern Nigeria every other day because there's a movie that they want, there's a story to be told here. But let me not steal one of your favorite moments. How about you talk to us a little more to me about why this caught your attention?
I mean, when you were speaking with her, you talked about the what's the word? Accessibility of films, right? You know, when we talk about the arts, um, um, literature, dancing, drama, visual arts, but everybody can relate to films, right? So I think there's a connection. So when someone who is passionate about film speak, it gets people's attention. So I really you coming from her. Again, Nollywood is very big. Nollywood is one that has to the world. Nollywood Afrobeat, and to be a part of that eventually. She mentioned I thought that was very fascinating as well. She's Bollywood come such some people that are outside of India could the dancing, all of that. Why can't
The reason why she used from 7 o'clock do this, but in Kaduna at least I can speak. Mothers with their children watching movies to back. So the ones we come up right after that. At least three. That's why she used Bollywood.
Just always in speaking. Yes, I would say.
And they have subtitles across the screen. It's definitely northern series where as a drama language or any Nigeria. I'll say that as somebody Chinese watching because they always then lovely. It'll be lovely to see.
Nigeria is like northern Nigeria is more
Muslim.
Yeah, many stories that in northern Nigeria. I thought that was
About the Nollywood versus curious conversation. Especially because such movie. Also, India is not a monolith. Talk about the Muslims, and then they custom. There's a lot of there's station today. Go to talk versus the movies. Not necessarily talk north south. You talk right their culture.
Yep.
Diverse histories are known by the. Here it's about the extent. Patterns, like a for makers, the broader knowledge. It's not.
Yeah,
It's just.
I'm of the opinion. I think that the disservice. You Kannywood movies in as that come out from what is everywhere else. That Kannywood from as that comes out from anywhere else in Nigeria. that we see films out of Nigeria, the biggest films out of Nigeria. I won't extent impact or how widespread it's in Nigeria. And we'll say that I don't see as many films, as many in the cinema films, but how about we see them in the cinema?
I see them. They're on point that Aisha Bima said yesterday, right? When she talked about how the patron businessmen, women, she made a point about upgrading if of what they expect from the arts, because perhaps that's where the issue is. And I think what we don't know simply because of that, because no one has sat down to say, look, let's do the quantification, right? Let's put in place a proper system that allows us to know how many movies are being produced, how many people are buying those movies, how much is this sub industry making, right? And there's an underestimation, right? Hausa is a language that's spoken across multiple countries on the continent. The first time I went to Kenya, we went to a village, and I forget the name now, pardon me. We went to a village, and this elderly man who was in his 60s brought kola nut. Why? Because he'd been watching Nollywood movies all his life, particularly the movies that came from Igbo people.
Right.
And he knew that kola nut, breaking kola nut, was a culture. So he brought it because he knew Nigerians were coming. How many Nigerians? There were just two of us, myself and a man from Kogi State. Neither of us were Igbo, right? But we knew what he was talking about. Now, that was the first time I got a sense of the extent to which Nollywood movies make it out and have been making it out. The same can be said of Kannywood, because Hausa is a widely spoken language beyond northern Nigeria. But again, we have not paid enough attention. And some criticism, a valid criticism, could be made that the system that needs to be put in place needs to come from the people within the northern system or within Kannywood, such that, you know, we can now do a proper quantification across Nigeria.
Nabila, you know, what I would really like to see is the sort of collaboration that Nollywood is gradually building with Hollywood. We've on occasion seen American actors in Nollywood films. We've occasionally seen Nigerian Nollywood actors in Hollywood productions. I would really love to see that. I would really love to see those sort of connections between these two industries that make up a large part of what we offer out of Nigeria.
I mean, you do see that sometimes. There are a few so-called Nollywood films that have so-called Kannywood actors,
yes,
and vice versa. So I think it's happening. I also think that compared to say 10 years ago, we've made huge progress, right? 10 years ago, we weren't talking about Nollywood or Kannywood in the light in which we speak of them right now. So a lot of strides have been made. And, you know, in the conversation about legacy, sometimes we forget where we are, right? And look too much into the future. And so the legacy is being built right now. So we can look forward and also appreciate what we have.
Right.
So we don't become prisoners of the moment and forget that something good is happening right now. So I think a lot of progress has been made. There's still a lot of room to cover. There's a lot of road to travel. But I think the Nigerian film industry, Nollywood, Kannywood, Atibebelo, we are making good inroads. And the fact that we're even having these conversations is good progress.
So let's leave this bit for a moment. There were other conversations, and Tomi has given a sense of one of his favorite moments. I want to do me, me, me. It's my turn.
Okay.
Thank you. The one panel I was definitely looking forward to was a conversation on confronting the culture of low expectations. And it was, again, specific to the North. I remember when the festival director, Lola Shoneng, was introducing the panel, she talked about the amount of abuse the level, the quality of it really that Northerners get on social media, especially platforms such as Twitter, X, right? Where all of Nigeria essentially gangs up against this region. And we accepted that, okay, there are some things that are true. The poverty levels, the quality of education and what's coming out of it, just the quality all round, whether it's education or anything else, because that was now the conversation, those low expectations or the low expectations across the board in our social, cultural, economic, whatever it is, engagements, right? And this panel had someone by the name of Abdul Halim Ishak Ringim, who I think made a brilliant submission. At the end, he was asked, what are the 3 things you would do if you had all the power to change the system and change this culture of low expectations? So I'm gonna give us a sense of what he said, and then I'll get your thoughts on it.
But just run through your 3 things.
Yeah,
quickly,
okay.
if you don't mind.
3 things. I think we from the educational sector, if government, for example, would sustain that. So I think what I would start with is, if wishes were horses, of course, and I had all the power, I would facilitate an elite consensus around an agreement that certain things should not be compromised, and one of that should be education. And in doing that, I'll also facilitate the revamping of the entire leadership recruitment structure, especially in northern Nigeria, and the way we choose leaders. Secondly, I also facilitate a sense of accountability, a sense of public accountability by the people of northern Nigeria. So, from the culture of low expectations, and we're expecting very low of our leaders. Let's take security and insecurity, for example. We've been traumatized so much that we've had stories of incidents where 100 people have been killed, 200 people have been killed. So when we hear a story where only 10 people were killed, we'll be like, thank God, alhamdulillah, it's just 10 people. I think it's something. I think they call it compassion fatigue or something, where you just feel, alhamdulillah. And it's really a product of a culture of low expectation and low public accountability. So I'll also make sure I facilitate. Then thirdly would be issues around instituting safe spaces where we would instill the culture of mentorship, like you said earlier. So having spaces where you would see people like Collab, Sanusi Collab, for example, and he's from Kaduna. I could do what Sanusi Collab is doing. Sani Muhammad, for example, no, I could do what he does. And we're even getting Lola from Lagos. It's still Nigeria, so I could still do what Lola does and all that. So having that safe space is also very important. So 3 things: leadership, both the culture and the recruitment process, public accountability, and the imperative of mentorship.
You are listening to Nabila Usman and Stephen Imediegwu at Kabafest.
So that was Abdul Halim Ishak Rengim, and I mean, he's an all-rounder in terms of public policy, public service, and whatnot. And I dare say that even though we were talking about northern Nigeria, even though that was the subject of conversation, there's certainly something to be drawn there for the rest of the country. And I say it because, again, I remember in the last 2 weeks on Breakfast, we've had listeners call in and say, when a governor has done XYZ thing, or a government official has done XYZ thing, the reaction is, so why are you applauding? That's what's expected.
It's your job.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's bare minimum.
But I do wonder, maybe Stephen will start, what your thoughts are. What exactly should a baseline level be for expectations?
Well, I think that as a Nigerian who has lived all of his life in Nigeria, I'm used to disappointment. I'm used to struggle, and as far as that goes, when it comes to a baseline, to the minimum expectation, I don't want to have to struggle across board. I don't want to have to struggle to live my life in my house. I don't want to have to struggle to iron my clothes. I don't want to have to struggle to preserve my food. I don't want to have to struggle to get into school. I don't want to have to struggle to vote in an election. I don't want to have to struggle. It's not to say that I want to be lazy. It is to say that you see that extra effort. I love Kaduna. This is not Lagos slander, but my typical morning in Lagos starts at 3 a.m. At 4:15, I'm on the roads to get to work because I want to avoid bad roads and I want to avoid traffic. And even though I live quite a distance from work, I should still be able to wake up an hour before I'm supposed to be at work and still, an hour, 30 minutes before I'm supposed to be at work and still get to work. But that is not the case because in Nigeria, the idea of good roads, multiple options for transportation does not exist, especially in a mega city like Lagos.
Hearing you makes me want to sing Fela's song. Suffer for what?
Enjoy for heaven.
I was not expecting.
I would
that.
really love to be able to enjoy some. I don't want to carry a power bank and move about. I don't want to
He doesn't want to be the minister of power.
I don't want to be the person who is always planning his life 2 hours ahead of wherever he's supposed, 4 hours actually ahead of wherever he's supposed
You know
to
what?
be.
I'm going to interrupt you because I need Tommy to come in. Your Lagos slander is more than enough. I support Tommy's thoughts.
So he mentioned something that I thought was fascinating. Abdul Halim Ishak.
Halim.
I apologize, Abdul Halim Isha. He was talking about compassion fatigue, right, and low expectations. It was like when you hear a certain number of people were killed, and you hear 10, and you're like, oh, it's just 10, right? And how we've become sort of desensitized to tragedy, to heartbreak. I remembered after the Chibok girls were kidnapped many years ago, subsequent kidnappings almost didn't feel like anything at a point, right? I remember reading the news that a number of school children had been kidnapped, and I had no reaction at all. And I had to actually pinch myself and say, Tommy, this is not normal. This is not normal. And I think sometimes you get so bogged down by bad news that you start to imbibe that culture of low expectations. Because
Right.
if it's just 5 people that died, you're like, wow,
Oh, it's
thank
just
God
5 people.
And these are human beings, right? They're not just numbers, they're actual human beings. So when he said that, I was like, it's something that we all have to think about constantly, not to get used to bad news, not to get used to tragedy, not to get used to incompetence. That's how you start accepting it because, oh, this is what has been happening in Nigeria for many years anyway. So it is what I thought that was a very fascinating point he made.
Well, I will resist the temptation to slander Lagos anymore and just move on. Another conversation from yesterday was a book chat. I will no say or
I want to say.
I want no say or dafe.
It's really interesting that it's not all northern names, but it's me that shall correcting all of you.
Well, the show is still young.
Look, your day will come. Ms. Odafen is an author of the book We Were Once Girls, and in her conversation yesterday, she discussed quite a number of things. But what we want to give you a sense of now is a question that almost every creative who has put out a work of art ends up answering at one point or the other, and that is the conversation around, or the question around, the process. How do you birth this work of art? Would like you to take a listen, and then we'll come back and chat about it a little.
First of all, I have a decent idea of the story I want to tell. It might not, it's never extremely detailed, but I have a very decent idea. And I spend a lot of time outlining because I find that when you're writing a story or when you're writing a book, sometimes you get lost. And going back to my outline kind of always gets me on track. So I find that outlining helps me a lot. So when I say outlining, I would write like, so first I'll start with writing, like breaking down the story into chapters, like writing a summary of what each chapter should be. Then I go through and flesh it out in detail, down to scenes. Sometimes I don't do it at once. Sometimes I do it as I go along, right? But all through, I kind of have an idea of what I should be doing at this point. And then when I'm stuck, I go back to my outline. I spend a lot of time breaking down my outline into scenes, like, okay, what would this person say here? Then what will happen after this? And just kind of telling myself the story again and getting myself back on track. And then sometimes if I struggle with a particular aspect of the story, I try to read a book that does that thing I'm trying to do well. Yes. So if I feel like maybe I'm struggling with a particular conversation or dialogue, I go read a book that has really good dialogue. If I'm struggling with a character that's very complex, I go read a book that has a complex character. So just something to keep me like, oh, this is this is it. This is what it should look like. Because it stays. It subconsciously it influences your writing, and then you find that it frees you because someone else has done it. So you should be. I can do it too.
You are listening to Nabila Usman and Stephen Imediegwu at Kabafest.
We Were Once Girls. Ms. Odafen talks about her process and what she said about telling herself the story over and over again to be sure that she is on the track that she needs to be on. Would explain why it is difficult now in the conversations that I've had with a lot of creatives, why it's difficult for them to say this is a favorite of mine, that is a favorite of mine. You become very invested. It stops being something that, oh, you're writing this to give to people. It now becomes a part of yourself. Every character in the book is a piece of you that has somehow, left you and is now going to be judged by other people. So that particular process, it almost makes me feel sorry for anybody who decides, I want to be a writer, I want to be a creative, I want to put out art, to people. And I empathize with authors.
And she also said something that I thought was really important. She was giving advice to writers who sometimes feel stuck during the writing process, and she was like, when you feel stuck, if you are struggling with a story, just go and read a book that is somewhat similar or inspiring to that particular story, right? If you're struggling with a sentence that concerns a complex character, go and read a book that has a sentence or multiple sentences with a complex character in it, right? The point of art is not just to write, it's also to consume it, right? So a lot of what you consume actually influences how you produce art, right? You know how they say there's nothing new under the sun. We are all in some way inspired by what has been created before, right? Nobody really creates anything original, even though some people will argue that what they've created is original. But really, everybody's remixing history.
I like how you said inspire versus imitate.
What's interesting is this point you made. That was what came to mind when she was talking about reading other stuff. If you're stuck with dialogue, read great dialogue and whatnot. I thought, when you do that, to what extent are you conscious enough that you're not replicating that person's work? I've had conversations with a few of my friends who are writers, and they say that, look, sometimes their greatest fear is the accusation of plagiarism, mostly because sometimes they'll write a piece and that's not, they didn't copy, but they didn't realize that they'd read something like this, say, I don't know, weeks ago, months ago, they read a lot. And it just comes to you subconsciously, and you're thinking, oh, wow, I've done something great. And then it is actually someone's work that they read.
Yeah. I mean, as long as you are not plagiarizing, right? If you notice, a lot of, when we talk about literature, you you hear people say things like Kafkaesque. When they refer to Hemingway, I've forgotten the adjective they use as well. We're all inspired by something, right? As long as you're not consciously plagiarizing, I think you'll be fine. And also, right, we're writing. The more you write, the more you discover your own voice, and you realize at the very beginning. Say, I'm giving advice as if
Actually, Tommy is a writer. I don't know why he's pretending.
Okay, true, that's true. At the very beginning, you write based on what you've read by your influences, but eventually, your own voice starts to come out, even though they are still inspired by those influences. Your own voice starts to come out. So I think there's a lot of usefulness in reading, and do not plagiarize.
Do not plagiarize. Goes without saying. Look, you're listening to Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. We're coming to you live from Kaduna City at the Kaduna Book and Arts Festival, Kabafest 2024. My name is Nabila Usman, here with my co-host
Stephen Imediegwu.
And we're joined on today's conversation by Radio Now's Tomi Olubemi. And look, we've just come from what was a conversation, giving you a sense of day 2 at Kabafest. We are expecting conversations on the other side, right? Between 7 and 8 a.m., we've got conversations on climate with Aaron John from the African Narrative on Climate Change. We'll also be talking with Aisha Aliu Bima at some point this morning. She's a creative director and a fine artist herself. More conversations coming to you here on Now Breakfast. But before then, what's an art festival? Book an art festival without a little poetry. Oh, poetry.
Yes,
KP.
you're really doing poetry now.
Yes. Oh.
It's poetry, not poetry.
Well, let me expose Tommy to you guys. It's like when we go to Abuja and we're going to Guzape. The first few times, Tommy kept saying Guzape. His Yoruba-ness could not leave him.
Can I defend myself?
Pe.
Do you want to pronounce? Do you want to pronounce it?
It's Guzape, but in Yoruba language, when there's a P, it's usually P.
Yeah, there's a
Popola.
Never mind that he went to Abuja.
It's not. It's look. It's Poju, not Poju. So I saw Guzape. I saw PE, and it was not English, so my brain just Yorubalized it.
The Yoruba word Igbe ends up coming out as Ebwe with one of my uncles. So I feel you. I empathize with you.
Look, again, what is a Book and Arts Festival without a little poetry? Richard Ali, the all-round rabble-rouser, has a book of poems that's called The Anguish and Vigilance of Things. There was a book chat at the festival here on his book. It actually happened yesterday. We were able to corner him and get him to read a little poetry for us. But part of the conversation was also around the I guess the everlasting nature of creativity of the arts, because his book of poems was published more than 5 years ago, and here it is being discussed at a festival in 2024, meaning that it could be discussed at a festival in 2036, in 2057. I know we've probably not thought of those dates, but they're actually much closer than we know. Yeah. So we've got Richard here reading his poems and giving us a sense of his thoughts on that recycling nature of the arts.
If it is art, then it is by its nature, it must stand the test of time. And this is where the honesty of the artist comes from, his sense of authenticity with the material to which he is presented. We are presented with the material of our lives, whether in the context of the day-to-day or in the context of culture or national spaces or even international spaces. And it is up to the individual artist to interpret all of these contexts through the prism of their own life and see what is refracted, what is reflected, what is thrown back, as it were. Now, if you are able to do this in the most honest way possible, then you are able to create art that is definitely timeless. Because what is it about art itself that resonates? It's that somebody who has no connection at all with the artist is able to read it or see it or hear it and instantly feel something fundamentally human, something fundamentally shared with somebody you don't even know. So the task of the artist really is that interpretation. And the tendency is, of course, to filter, but you cannot filter. It's the prism of your life, and this is what you're doing with it. This is what has come to you, and this is so. If you are able to be honest, I cannot emphasize the necessity of honesty and authenticity for the artist any more than I have. But if there's authenticity and if there's a sense of honesty, then what you produce in terms of art will definitely last. In the case of my poems, of course, I'm pleasantly surprised to see that several years later, people still read it and people still have questions and people still feel very, very strongly about it. So I feel very satisfied as an artist that this has happened in this way. And for this, I am grateful that I have been able to create something like this that has some sort of permanence, at the personal level, without ego, of course, but there is a deep sense of satisfaction.
So one lesson I learned this year, actually this week at Kabafest, is that you will never hear "This is my favorite piece" from any artist, because every single one of them feels like a part of you, a special, unique part of you, and it's impossible to pick a favorite. But if you tried to talk about the poems in this particular collection, which two would you say stood out for you, perhaps in terms of their subject matter or the places that they took you to in the process of birthing them?
Yeah, as you've correctly prefaced it, it's really impossible to say which of one's poems or short stories or which chapter in a book that one has written or which painting one prefers. You can only, I mean, as the time-worn tradition, when people are faced with this, speak of, okay, this is a poem and this is what it said and which is important to me. And this is another one, which is what it said, which is important to me. So if you push me to the wall that way, I'll pick two of my poems. The first one is Ash, and it's a love poem. So for the sake of love is very important to me in my poetry and in my life. So for the sake that it's a love poem that speaks of all that feeling, I would pick Ash for that, and that it was inspired by Kampala, or it was written in Kampala, which is where I was at that time, and it was a beautiful space of memory, as it were. The second one would be, I think, Blood and Broken Radios, and that was written at the height of the Occupy Nigeria protests when I was young and quite active in social causes. Occupy Nigeria was the watershed of my generation, as it were. And so that poem was written in that period. And I felt that that was the moment when we stopped being uh, young people and we became adults, you know. So I would pick those two poems for those reasons. But it really is very difficult to choose between one's poems. Yes.
Definitely. Now, I'm hoping that we can get a reading of these two poems if you can muster that energy.
Sure. This is the poem Ash by Richard Ali from The Anguish and Vigilance of Things. I love you as ash, I say. Each speck of me teases a pore of your skin, herdswoman brown, as ants across earth. My desire invades you. Nothing is left but the stare of your eyes. Eyes are pathways, I've seen enough. Truth is but the echo of dreams. Flecks of arms, taste of tongue, the way you lay in my bed are all truths. Eyes are doorways. The roads are old, the lines are ancient, all lead to this Kampala of tucked hills hiding secrets. You despair the end of fire, I say, ash is potent too. Ash is the dream of wood that cannot be burned. Broken Radios and Blood by Richard Ali from The Anguish and Vigilance of Things. Contorted like Christ in Mary's arms, the children, baton charged and tear gassed, make it home, become tears, merge with image and meat. They dared to flower and were doomed, they dared, outrageous as roses on a grey sea, were doomed for their white petals, their love for fragile country. Jubilee Square is now Jerusalem bereft, strewn with pure water sachets, broken radios, unclaimed mats, blood. The curtain is rent now. The country rests in peace.
You are listening to Nabila Usman and Stephen Imediegwu at Kabafest.
Poet Richard Ali.
Rabble rouser.
Rabble rouser, indeed. Sharing his part of the conversation, focusing on the timeless nature of arts, as well as reading to us from his book of poems, The Anguish and vigilance of all things. Beautiful poetry right there. You're still on to the special Saturday edition of Now Breakfast, brought to you from the city of Kaduna, where we're at Kabafest 2024. Our conversations will resume in just a moment as we start to talk to a number of people from this year's festival. Aaron John features on this conversation, as well as conversations around arts and legacy. We'll be speaking with Aisha Ali Ubima. Quite a number of other conversations are coming up this morning, and we ask, as always, that you stay tuned. My name is Stephen Imediegwu, here with Nabila Usman. To stay with us.
Every second and every minute, something new happens. The news
people at a spot, and angry mob decided to burn.
Everyone wants to share it, but not everyone wants to dig deep. Now that's where we come in. We bring you the news and go beyond with in-depth conversations and analysis with stakeholders.
I honestly think that the federal government on its own part has
if voters or more people want to be part of that decision-making process, they need to be part.
GDP is not a good measure of development anyways. We are not there. We need to counter the narrative of the fact that food does not count.
We bring you the story within the story, and that's what makes us tick. We are Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos, and we go beyond the news.
The news that matters the most is the news that hits closest to home. If it touches your business, your family, your city, your schools, or your safety, we've got you covered. Everything that affects you is our concern. So, we go beyond, getting all the facts and serving you news and information you can trust.
There was 10 million liters of fuel made available at some point, which was not made available at the time because obviously it had to be blocked.
They attacked this Gayo village, Keru, and the Takalafia village yesterday. It's one of the many attacks.
Radio Now, 95.3 FM Lagos, beyond the news.
Connect with us now via our social media channels. Facebook.com/RadioNow953FM.
We're on Twitter too. Connect with us there and get involved.
At Radio Now 953 FM. 953 FM. Like what we do? Share it on your socials and tell everyone.
Want to see some more of us? Head over and meet us on Instagram
at Radio Now 953 FM. Get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.
Calling all music and book lovers, fans of fiction and art enthusiasts. Something is brewing in Kaduna.
Kabafest.
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 Don't miss the Kaduna Book and Art Festival special on Radio Now.
It's like a revival.
Books.
When writing The 7 Necessary Sins, did you know it would connect with women globally?
He has this new book, People Live Here. It's an amazing book.
Poetry.
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. Cancer had been at the edge of my throat.
For once the Ayiridi dies down, the next sounds you are going to be hearing is Gas Yakari.
And music.
So just do what I do when I
Join Nabila and Stephen from Thursday, May 2nd to Saturday, May 4th from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos.
Be a part of our online community on Facebook. Like our page on www.facebook.com/This Is Radio Now to join every conversation on air and get up-to-date news information on the go.
You are listening to Nabila Usman and Stephen Imediegwu at Kabafest.
Welcome back. You're still listening to the Kabafest special here on Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. My name's Nabila Usman, here with my co-host
Stephen Imediegwu.
And we're coming to you live from Kaduna City. It's just a few minutes past 7 a.m. this Saturday, May the 4th. And yes, May the 4th be with you. We have with us our next guest, right? She had a conversation at the festival yesterday on the importance of preserving the legacy of the arts in northern Nigeria. She happens to be director of arts at the African School of Economics, is an independent artist herself, fine arts. Well, um, she has a way she particularly speaks of the medium she uses to create her own art. She's a curator. I've had the lovely opportunity of seeing some of her work. She's doing her first solo exhibition in Lagos just next month. So we're a few weeks away, and we're happy to add on some of that pressure by making her have this conversation with us, talking about none other than Aisha Aliyu Bima, who's here with us. Hi, Aisha. Good morning.
Hi, Nabila. Good morning.
It's good to have you.
Yeah, it's really good to be here.
Okay, so, we don't want to be the murderers of what you do. So let's start with that, right? You talk to us about that before we dive further into the conversation.
Okay, so as you mentioned, I am the director of arts at the African School of Economics, and I'm an independent curator, mostly. Yeah. And just a little point of correction: the exhibition in Lagos at the MEC Shillong Museum of Arts, I'm curating it. There's none of my work there.
Right.
So it's an exhibition of about 47 contemporary artists from northern Nigeria that
47
are
is a big
in
number.
practice. Yeah, or it's crazy doing something like that, but it's also very important to do it because there is an underrepresentation of northern fine plastic artists in the Nigerian mainstream art world. And every time, I'm in Lagos, which really is the capital of Nigerian arts, and I ask the question, there are over 100 exhibitions in Lagos in a year, and why aren't there any northern artists? Sometimes a year will go by, and out of those exhibitions, there would be none from, and they're like, oh, we just don't know them. We just don't see their work. So for me, it's very important to take the works of, the contemporary artists practicing at the top level in northern Nigeria and sort of present it in a place as important as the Emiti Shillong Museum and in Lagos itself.
So there was a conversation that we had prior to you joining us this morning, and it was around Kannywood and that connection with Nollywood. What you have just said now keys into a point that I made, that I would like to see a lot more collaborations, a lot more, I guess, platforming, or to speak the parlance in Lagos. I want me to allow them, the things that happen in the north. How important is it rather to have artists from the northern part of Nigeria come into a place like Lagos that has the eyes of the entire world on it, to show that when you talk about art in Nigeria, it's not just what you see on the big screens. It's not what you see in Lagos alone. Lagos may be where the eyes of the world is, but there is a lot more to Nigerian art than what is available in Lagos.
I think it's absolutely important for artists from northern Nigeria, artists from the south, artists from the southeast that are more underrepresented in the Lagos scene to be seen, because it presents a holistic view of what Nigeria is to someone that doesn't know. I think with northern artists specifically, if one were to, write a book about contemporary Nigerian art from, say, the 80s or the 2000s, it would be very possible to do that and leave out most of the northern artists because they are not really seen by the mainstream. And then secondly, I think when everybody is able to see and compete in a healthy way, then it advances all of our practices, and then it helps us to also know how to create a future for ourselves as Nigerians, as Africans. I'll give a little example. A few months ago in Abuja, I was in a panel. I was listening to the discussion on architecture, and they were talking about how we can move African architecture into the future. And one example that was made was that, in the past, when homes were being built, the community would come out and collaborate to build those homes. But I'm like, no, in certain parts of Nigeria, northern Nigeria to be specific, we already had an advanced architectural practice. We had licensed masons, licensed brickmakers, licensed architects. So you had to go through a training process to actually achieve this. We had created our own standards and codified them. So when we're not able to look at it holistically, we think, oh, it was just from the West that they brought architecture to us. So it's very important for us to know where we're coming from so we can really understand where we are, and then we can know, oh, where we can get to and actually invent things for ourselves. So for example, with architecture, we could now go back to those systems and see how we can bring them to the modern age and actually create standardized systems of training for, informal workers that we have based on what we had already and what would be more familiar to our people. So yeah, I think it's absolutely important to have everybody when we're trying to craft this story of the new Nigeria. You just can't have one part of the country, overrepresented and say, oh, these are our struggles, or this is our power. Then what happens to the rest? So you end up building a new Nigeria that is not reflective of everybody. Yeah.
I'm interested in the North, there's a tangible sense of contentment. From a different perspective, you could say that it's laziness, but from an average Northerner's perspective, it's actually contentment. And perhaps that is a double-edged sword, because it then raises the question of how aspirational, right, Northern professionals are, creatives, artists, whatever the case. I ask this because you've referred to Northern architecture, you've referred to the masons, the artisans, right? These ecosystems existed before. They've been in existence for as long as possible. You're curating 47 Northern artists who were doing the work, right? Whether or not the world knew they were doing the work. So is that what the issue is? Is it that the general sense of contentment seems to color the importance, or just knowing why it's important to, as Stephen said, loud it?
Yeah, I think so. I think sometimes that what that contentment with where we are does is that it might scare other people that we need in the ecosystem to help push the needle forward. So sometimes with artists, even when they're able to push themselves to create, if there's a curatorial vacuum, if there's a vacuum of art writers, if there's a vacuum of art critics, then no one is there to help them get into the spaces that they need. And sometimes that's what that contentment, I think, does for us. It stops us from seeing the possibilities that exist. I think for since I started, I think where many young people in the North are like, oh, they never actually knew this was a possibility, because for a very long time they thought it was something that they could, they absolutely did not need to do, or they couldn't do. So yeah, I think that it really restrains us from exploring like other possibilities, and I think it's something that is, as you said, a double-edged sword. They're the good parts of it. I think sometimes we really, we're really just okay with being there and in Borno, and like she's chasing locks her work up somewhere in the University of Maiduguri. And why shouldn't the world see this absolutely relevant, absolutely fantastic, relevant work? And yeah, I think it's just the contentment thing.
Well, every time, or well, the next word that comes to mind is terror. And that is because it's one region of Nigeria that has suffered in recent times more than the region. There's hardly a day that Ghost Story is not coming out from the north. As a curator of the arts, do you fear that at some point the arts that will be coming out from the north will, I guess, be inundated with this dark chapter in our history as a nation? And I ask this because I think of pictures of the north that I've seen. I think of the architecture that I saw as a boy, traveling through parts of the north. And I think of how that would, in say 20 years, stand side by side with the artistry that will come out of northern artists who are currently pushing their work to the rest of the world? And do you fear that who we are might be colored by who we are now, and or rather what we are seeing now?
So art is something that holds up a mirror to society, and I also sincerely believe that art is something that cleanses us. And when we go through something as terrible, as tragic as the situation in northern Nigeria has been for the past decade, then I don't think that it is something so problematic or shameful that we go and document those, or that we make work that reflects that. The reason that I'm a curator today is in a way because of conflict, right? I was born and raised in Jos, and by the time I was 16, I realized that the city that I grew up in was very different from the city that I was living in at that point. And I was an internet baby, so I would go on the internet and try to find things that documented the city, that I knew, and there was nothing. So that sort of drove me to begin to aggressively document, catalog, archive whatever I could of the city. So in a way, even my current curatorial practice is a documentation of the conflict in northern Nigeria. And I don't think it's a bad thing, but it would help us that when we document that, sometimes it might seem shameful that we went through this, but what can we do? We have already gone through it. So even if the art is inundated by it, it's going to make us see what we went through and actually develop that resolve that, oh, there's still some beauty in the madness that we went through. And now sometimes I look back at the life of 16-year-old me in Jos, about a decade ago, and I'm like, wow, there was still beauty, in the chaos. There were 6 a.m. curfews and gunshots in the air waking me up, but people still lived, and people were still determined to push through and get an education and create beauty in that madness and get married and even create new cultures to navigate the curfews. And the photographer Fatih Abakar, I think she's done a brilliant job of capturing the beauty amidst conflict. She document her work on Bits of Borno. She documented the day-to-day lives of people living through the very worst of the Boko Haram crisis, and you would never see any blood or the gore in the work. What you would see is beauty, is that people would still have to wake up, find food to eat, people would still love, children will still laugh even in the most dire of circumstances. So yeah, I don't think it would be a bad thing that our arts documents this gruesome part in our history. It is something we went through, and we don't squirm when we see over 200 films covering World War II. Every year there's a new film, there's a new exhibition, there's new art that is talking about the Second World War. It is something terrible. We must learn to look at our problems critically through the art. And for me myself, I would be extremely pleased if we have art that looks and looks and looks and looks at this dark time in our history, so that we can remember that this is not something we should ever go through again.
I do wonder if perhaps it's not that this is something that's currently happening. With World War II, you can sort of look back and romanticize it even. We saw that with the movie Oppenheimer, the American movie Oppenheimer. And I remember the backlash out of Japan because they were on the receiving end of that devastation. And Japanese people came out and said, why are you guys applauding? You've romanticized this man that destroyed us, and we continue to feel the impact. So there is the it's not privilege. You've got the luxury of looking back and romanticizing. Today is today. If we open the papers, I'm almost certain right now you will find the story. Someone's been kidnapped yesterday. Someone's been killed yesterday. Someone's been burnt. So their houses they burnt down yesterday, right? So it's just really current. And I wonder in this case whether we should look towards escapism, right? While the artists that want to do the preservation of the current times for the next 20 years from now, we can then look back and perhaps, or 100 years, look back and perhaps romanticize it. And I say that carefully. So, should we be looking more towards escapism?
I think there is escapism, and that's what I'm trying to say, right? The fine arts are like a sort of tricky thing. And as I said, if you look on, I'm going to use Fatih Abakar often as an example for this because she's someone that has documented conflict in the most brilliant way. So you go to her page, and I think you would be hard pressed to find a picture of someone with a sad face, if a picture of someone crying, a picture of a sad moment, a picture of something tragic. No. Her pictures are of happy people, are of thriving people. They don't document the conflict in the way, people think, like when you Google, and you see all those terrible, sad Google images. They're images of hope, they're images of life, and they're images of courage. But in a way, they are still documenting that conflict because they're happening right now. And it's like when you contextualize the image, you know that okay, this image of this couple getting married and laughing, is in the backdrop of 400 people killed yesterday, and it's not that they're mocking the people, it's just an image of resilience and of hope.
Let me ask you this off the back of that. Is there a responsibility from those who consume the art, right? And I ask this in light of the example you've given of Fatia Bakr. That exists, and yet our go-to is terror, our go-to is death, our go-to is, just an absence of life across the board, right? So how would you describe the audiences or Nigerians, regular people such as you and myself and Stephen? What's our responsibility to the artists who are producing, our responsibility to changing the narrative because these things exist and someone else has seen it and captured it?
So I would like to again emphasize the point of having the whole art ecosystem. Yes, there's a responsibility on the viewer to view the work and try to understand where the work is coming from, to remember the artist's name but it's also the bigger responsibility of the art ecosystem, so of the curator, of the art writer, to contextualize that work, to be able to situate it properly in a way that people can get a holistic view of what is happening. The reason you have curators doing the work or doing exhibitions is not just because someone else cannot come and put the artwork on the wall. No, the job of a curator is to properly situate the work within the context of the place it was created and the context of the places that it's going to go to. And that's what to really enable us to tell the story properly. So for my exhibition at the MEC Shillong Museum in Lagos, there is a part of the exhibition that covers conflict. But at the same time, there's another part. You walk through the exhibition and there's a part where we go into Northern futurism, right? Because in the backdrop of all of this conflict, you have artists like Salim Abdul Razak, like it's Imran Tilde, experimenting what a northern future can look like, which is something so hopeful, something so bright, something so technologically relevant, right? Because they're looking at a future that, we're technologically advanced, we're building technological tools for us by us that are actually fully relevant to our lives and our context. And I just think when you're able to have that holistic view, then you see the beauty, the brilliance, and then you see the difficulty of the situation, which I would eternally insist that it is important to see.
So I would love to come back to architecture because I weirdly enough think that architects are artists. I think that what they build and how they build it tells a story of who we are, what our lives entail on a day-to-day basis. And it breaks my heart every time an old building goes down. A few have gone down in Lagos, and I'm taking some time out today to go through Kaduna and see what I can find. Um, I wonder if there is a place in the curation of the arts for architecture that, we don't just put on a pedestal where we come and look at it and it's pretty, but we can engage with that art by living in it. Is there a future for art that we can interact with every day, that connects us to who we are, that recognizes where we are now, and still takes care of the place that we need to be?
Um, yeah. So architects are, for me, are artists like that. Were not bold enough to tell their parents I want to go to art school, so they're like, oh, I'll do this thing called architecture. Architecture is absolutely art. Some of my favorite curators are architects. Some of my favorite artists are architects as well. I think there's a deep interconnection between architectural practice and the arts. And right now, there's something interesting that has been happening with the younger generation of Northern Nigerian architects that I've been noticing. They seem very intent on going back to their heritage and bringing back those old techniques. I don't know if it's that we have all gotten disillusioned with the square homes and tiny windows, and especially now with band A, band B, nobody wants to be. So really, we have been forced to go back and look at how we can bring back those buildings with those wonderful cooling systems that already existed. And yeah, I think there's also a lot of documentation going on by Ahmed Abdullahi Almajiri. That's what he's known as. He's a brilliant photographer that has been documenting usable, functional, ancient Northern Nigerian architecture. And I think even for young people who are tired of like the low quality of buildings, and really people are really, really interested in going back and looking at these surviving relics. And people are going back to look at the works of Demas Onwoko, who's like a brilliant Nigerian artist and architect who really championed building for the society that we live in, not the sort of aspirational style of Nigerian architecture that has become so popular. So yeah, I have a lot of hope for architecture. There's a lot of work going on between Nigerian artists and architects. And as I mentioned, the monument in Kano that was pulled down last year, it was an ode to classical Nigerian architecture. It was an ode to northern symbolism, and it was an ode to Kano itself. And it was pulled down because the person who ordered it assumed that people did not care. But when that monument was pulled down, the backlash shocked even me, because I didn't think this was something that was so relevant to the people, but they strongly felt that it represented them. They were, they went, it was overwhelming. And for me, that just cemented my resolve to do the work that I do, because you can see that when you take these steps, people just become so overwhelmingly responsive and positively so. Every day I wake up on WhatsApp and there's an uncle of mine that I thought hated art sending me some old article, sending me books from Kano, sending me old books from Jigawa, because they see the importance in what I do. And it's such a privilege to work in this region and to tell the stories of the people. I would like to say though, when that monument, which was designed by the foremost contemporary Northern Nigerian artist Kaltume Ghana, was pulled down, there was not a single response from the mainstream Nigerian art space. It was like it did not happen. And this is what I say when I say it is so important that, we take these, we build our own capacity, but we also take these stories, because you cannot say you're speaking for Nigerian artists, and when something this devastating happens, even though a resolution has been reached now, you don't make a comment about it. Right? It's just not fair, and it doesn't make any sense.
Aisha, we want to say a big thank you to you. This has been an insightful conversation. It's not the end of the conversation, because there's a lot you said that spurs things in my mind, but unfortunately our time is up. But I want to say thank you and good luck on your exhibition, your curation, right? And we're certainly looking forward to it.
Oh, I look forward to seeing you there. June 1st, Yemisi Shillong Museum of Art. Thank you.
There you have it. Aisha Ali Bima is an independent curator. She's also the creative director, the director of arts at the African School of Economics, speaking to us on really just a wide range of things, but around just the culture of art in northern Nigeria, the reception to it, the legacy of it, the history of it. These are the conversations we've just had, and much more is coming up in just a few minutes. The founder of the African Narrative on Climate Change joins us on for a conversation on environment, climate, the big voodoo thing they call climate change that most of us don't believe. You want to stick around for this. This is Radio Now 95.3 FM, Lagos.
Every second and every minute, something new happens. The news breaks.
People at the spot and angry mobs decided to burn.
Everyone wants to share it, but not everyone wants to dig deep. Now that's where we come in. We bring you the news and go beyond with in-depth conversations and analysis with stakeholders.
I honestly think that the federal government on its own part has
If voters or more people want to be part of that decision-making process, they need to be part.
GDP is not a good measure of development anyways. We are not there. We need to counter the narrative of the fact that our vote does not count. If your vote does not count.
We bring you the story within the story, and that's what makes us tick. We are Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos, and we go beyond the news.
Calling all music and book fans of something is brewing in Kaduna.
Kabafest.
Don't miss show on Radio Now.
It's like a revival.
Books.
When writing The 7 Necessary Sins, did you know it would connect with women globally?
He has this new book, People Live Here. It's an amazing book.
Poetry.
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. Cancer had been at the edge of my throat.
But once the Ayiridi dies down, the next sounds you are going to be hearing is Gas Yakari.
And music.
So just do what I do when I do.
Join Nabila and Stephen from Thursday, May 2nd to Saturday, May 4th from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Radio Now 95.3 FM, Lagos.
News and information go around every second. The ones who deliver it and how matter. We give you depth, substance from the real sources.
I made statements in that regard.
There wasn't any agreement between Bashir Machina and Ahmad Lawan.
The DPO, the divisional police officer who is on ground there, went there.
Also giving you a more human angle on the events that matter.
They are not people that live in mansions, but they are people that live within localities, and the people are afraid to.
There's so many issues there in area boys. Then we now went to.
Let's cut the convention and rather have a conversation. Radio Now 95.3 FM, Lagos. We go beyond the news.
Be a part of our online community on Facebook. Like our page on www.facebook.com/This is Radio Now to join every conversation on air and get up-to-date news information on the go.
You are listening to Nabila Usman and Stephen Imediegwu at Kabafest.
You're welcome back into the conversation. It's still the special broadcast of Now Breakfast, brought to you on a Saturday in the very cool, well-kept city of Kaduna at the Kaduna Book and Arts Festival 2024. I'm Stephen Imediegwu here with the homegirl herself, Nabila Usman. And this morning, our conversation takes a look at the shadow that is climate change. We're going to be speaking with our guest here, who is in a unique position to shed more light on what climate change is and what we are supposed to be doing as Nigerians and indeed Africans. Aaron John is the founder of the African Narrative on Climate Change, and he'll help us with our understanding of the challenges that this shadow presents to Nigeria. Aaron, good morning, and thank you for joining us for this conversation.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
To jump right into it, what's the actual African narrative on climate change?
So it's a complex story,
Mm.
and often we hear about the vulnerabilities that climate change presents to Africa, and this is true. And through inaction, we might actually suffer a lot from the impact of climate change. But on the flip side of it is an opportunity for us to take an existing green continent and push it into the future of sustainability. Already, the continent contributes just about 4 to 6% of to greenhouse gases.
Mm.
So that means we are about 96% green already. You can argue that this is from lack of development and an industrialized society, but if that is true, it means we are at a crossroad to choose between developing sustainably and also developing through the paths that the Western world had developed, contributing to greenhouse gases. So what we want to do at the African Narrative on Climate Change is how do we spur the conversations that makes it possible that people begin to see it from the vantage point of possibility and creativity and innovation, and how we can transform Africa from what it is now to the prospect of what it can be whilst being green and sustainable. That is the African narrative.
So, what you have said, actually, your opening answer reflects everything that I've heard as far as climate change is concerned, and the whole idea of greenhouse emissions. Um, the percentage that Africa contributes to global warming is small. And when you look at the needs that we have, Nigerians, Africans, for development, as well as the constant pressure that we face to diversify our energy needs, diversify from fossil fuels, you almost get the feeling that the rest of the world doesn't want development out of Africa because the rest of the world industrialized with fossil fuels. And now we find ourselves being told, don't do it. It's harmful to the environment. Find another way. And I'm putting all this together to ask the question of how badly hit are we in terms of our development as a continent and in terms of what climate change is doing to us?
I would say, on one hand, we are always a responsive and reactive continent, always reacting to what's going on and never taking the reins to say, okay, look, whether this is happening or not, I don't care what the developed world nation wants. We are going to do what we want to do, either way, good or bad. If we want to chart the course of fossil fuel emissions, let's do it with our chest and chart the course for fossil fuel emissions and power through our industrialization if we want to do it. But if we also want to develop sustainably, let's also power through that sustainable development. And that's what I'm going to say. Every single time where the conversations about the rest of the world not wanting Africa to develop, I begin to ask, all of the resources, human resources that we have here, the talents, the innovation, the raw materials, the access to natural resources like the sun, the wind, what is stopping us from making use of all of that to power through our own development? No one, because those deposits are here. But what do? We politicize them, we victimize the communities that these resources are under. We wait for the UN to tell us what to do. We wait for the international organizations to invite us to their platforms, never creating these opportunities for ourselves, never partnering with our neighboring countries, never developing any treaty that lasts longer than one administration between neighboring countries, never finding comparative advantages between ourselves. For example, it's much more easier for a Nigerian to go and try and do business with someone from Dubai than it is for a Nigerian to do business with someone from Ghana. So who is the culprit here? Ourselves. So we must bring the conversation back home and assume that the Western world or the West don't care about us. If we go through this mindset, if we take that assumption, they don't care about us. So what next? Let's assume that all the aid stop coming, all the finance stop coming from the West. What next? Are we going to fold our arms and say, "Oh, woe is me," or are we going to look for an alternative?
So I want to take you back actually. For me, the foundation of this conversation goes back to the African part. And maybe I'm limiting myself when I think about what the African narrative is on climate change. When I think of it, I think about what agrarian communities have been doing, say, in the last 20 years, adapting to what has been a real and physical impact on their livelihoods, their existence. It's been threatened. I always think that these are people who have names for what they have been experiencing. They have names for what they've been, how they've been adapting, and what they've been using to adapt. This is outside of government. When you think about the West and its narrative on climate change, it's actually very largely shaped by those policymakers, government structures, think tanks. In our case, it feels to me like it's the other way around. It's the common isn't the word, but the people who are much closer to the earth in the way that the earth is. So that's what I want to speak about. Should we be looking to adopt what they have created, right, to inform our own policy direction, whether it is as Nigeria or just continent wide as Africa?
What you painted is a picture of hope versus hopelessness. For majority of us down here, we have no direct link or impact to the government whatsoever. Our learning is self-taught. Our traditions are hand-me-downs. We have no institutional structures to live by. Our agriculture are self-taught. Our fishing methods are self-taught. So when things happen to us, we find ways to innovate by ourselves. And you are correct, because farmers have since known that something is changing. They've observed different weather patterns, and they have formed a consensus around themselves in their local rural communities to say, okay, let's plant when we see the rain. Sometimes the rain comes heavier and sometimes it's lower. Or let's fish around this side of the river now because of what happens. And I think we would continue that way. Otherwise, if we begin to look towards institutions and government to chart the course for this for climate change, we are going to fail woefully, because already we don't have the strong institutions to ensure that whatever policy that is around today is going to be implemented tomorrow. So if you see the trend, you see that climate activists are always community-based organizations, teaching people how to adapt, how to mitigate to the impacts that is already happening. To bring some things into perspective, in 2023, the number of internally displaced persons in Northeast Nigeria was about 2.2 million. Today, the number of internally displaced persons in Benue State alone is about 1.4 million. Not all of that is due to conflict. Most of those is also due to displacement by floods.
Yeah.
In 2023, 4 million persons needed assistance from flood in. How many of those persons have been directly affected by any government incentive or subsidy? They had to go and find ways to find their new sustenance, find their new livelihoods and all of that. So this actually is the African narrative, Nabila, and thank you for pointing that out. Is how the Africans, how have they been innovating, how have they been adapting, and how will they continue to adapt to the changing circumstances? And I'm hoping education and government can further support down the line, but we as Africans, we as the common men, have to be the first adapters to the impact of climate change.
Well, to come to what you talked about with Benue, those are shocking numbers, especially when you put them side by side with everything else that we've seen out of internally displaced that has caused people to be displaced in the northern part of Nigeria. But do you ever get the sense that we don't realize how dire the situation is? You know, when you start to advocate for proper responses to climate change, do you get the feeling that you're preaching to? It's not the case of the walls having ears this time around. It's the case of the walls not, opening their ears to listen. Are we aware of how dangerous our reactivity to climate change is?
Let me ask you a question. Um, Someone told me something. I never chop. You say make I plant tree. I don't even think it's a matter of not being aware or not being aware. It's just that the circumstances that surrounds us on a daily basis takes our mind from thinking long term to survival mode today. I want food today. We went into the streets to ask people about heat and what they feel about it and what they think is causing it. And then one of the respondents said, "Na cold water and gari I need." If man see gari with cold pure water drink now, everything go cool. So and that is the situation all around. Let's take a case of northern Nigeria, for example, where a lot of the rural communities still rely on charcoal and firewood for cooking. This same activity that is causing deforestation is also their means of livelihood. So if you bring policies that sanctions deforestation, are you also combating it with sustenance? How do these people transition to other forms of cooking fuel?
Mm.
Are you going to provide that alternative? So conversation around climate change sort of seem elitist to a point because people on the grassroots and at the at the lowest level of communities, they see something is happening. It's not like they don't care. What they care about is how to survive today.
I'm very interested in the role of vision, which comes to leaders. We're currently going through a heat wave like never seen before, and this across the planet. The UN agency, the weather agency for the UN, had released figures saying that from, I think this was February last year to March this year, every month recorded what was the highest temperatures ever recorded, right? And when I saw the news, I mean, the intelligent part of me that has been reading knows and believes it. But it really hit home when I came back home to Kaduna and I saw family members with heat rashes. We've lived in Kaduna for decades, and my family has gone through the weathers. I've never seen anybody break out in heat rashes. It's terrible. There's a heat wave in places like Adamawa and Yobe today. We have water issues, electricity issues in these states. Even here in Kaduna, some people were talking about, so I know what that is like. Last year, was it 2022, when former President Muhammadu Buhari, it was supposed to be a landmark moment, especially for climate change enthusiasts, people who've been trying to raise awareness. Since then, I don't know that I've heard anything, seen any direction from our leaders. They're the ones who don't need to think about tomorrow in terms of keeping body and soul together. So let's talk about that for Nigeria and how critical it is for Nigeria to get its act together if it's going to impact the rest of Africa.
Wow. So we have a group of persons in leadership that until recently have not been in contact with the conversation of on climate change. But they attend international summits and they hear this all the time now. And it's now seep into their lingo. If you look back at the manifesto for the last 3 administrations or 4 administrations, where there are no directions for climate change. All of these things are fairly new, and to be honest, the plans and conversations are there. The understanding is still shabby. If you take a look at the Climate Act, if you take a look at our energy transition plan, if you take a look at the documentation that some states have provided, you can still see that it is lacking the basic fundamental understanding that combating climate change is combating underdevelopment. And these two things must go side by side. So that's the missing piece of this vision. We must get our act right in ensuring that we develop rapidly and sustainably. Otherwise, we will not combat climate change. You will not combat flooding without improving waste management practices across board. And when you look at the conversations around climate change, that seems to be shifted, and we've moved to things just around planting trees. If we want to develop sustainably, we must also provide drainage systems city-wide. There is no city in Nigeria with a complex drainage system that end-to-end links you to the river. The conversation around climate change is a conversation around development. So that part of it is missing. We have these fancy documents, but we also don't understand that the Ministry of Works will have to champion these documents. The Ministry of Rural Development will champion this document. The Ministry of Environment and Agriculture, Finance, all of this will have to be key players in this document. And most especially, it must trickle down to the sub-regional and sub-nationals who don't even have any understanding of what those acts at the federal level is. And you don't have town halls bringing all the state governors together, all the local government chairmen together to say, come and let's discuss this policy that we formulated at the federal level and how we want to implement it. That's the missing vision. The missing vision is we think climate change is around planting trees and all of that, but the core is climate change is around consumerism and sustainable development. And that's it. If we don't develop as a nation, there is no way we can combat climate change.
I always come back to the question around how we can fund our development. Nigeria is a country that depends very heavily on oil exports, and I can say that and say oil imports as well. Now we're seeing ourselves going through a heat wave, as Nabila has pointed out. We're struggling to provide electricity for our homes. The backup generators can't even fire on. At the same time, we are in a nation that has abundant sunlight. I wonder if the conversations around policy and development need to start looking at what we have that is available to us in the short term, the natural resources. And I wonder if you are pushing in that direction to say, look, yes, there is danger. Yes, it is going to happen. But this we can do right now to help out, pending when we have our long-term solutions kicking in. Is that sort of thinking, is it existing in the conversations that you're having?
Yes, and thank you very much for bringing this up. There are instruments that can be applied to financing climate actions. But we must think outside the box. And I'll just give you an example of something we try to do in Kaduna. When you begin to think of managing cities as cities and not as local governments, territories, Kaduna North, or as Kaduna City, that gives you an instrument to be able to access finance from international level and from private sector. There are green financing and green bonds that are also accessible to cities in which they can access. Lagos State has used this instrument in financing some of its infrastructure. Kaduna did the same about 50 years ago to build its first, one of its very huge hospitals at the time. You crowdsource for finance and for funding from the residents of the states in such a way that they are all contributing to this investment, and because they are buying into this bond, at a later date they get a return on their investments. And a lot of countries have done this to finance widespread social projects, like development of slums. There's another model we try to do, which is self-development of slums, where residents participate in the development and retrofitting of their houses in the slum area. We develop the plan, and residents buy into the plan, but they pay in the lifetime of the amount of time that they have on the tenure of the land.
Okay.
If my land is leased for 35 years, I would pay for that remodeling over the course of 35 years.
And do they get that instant remodeling?
And they do get that instant remodeling, and it's a two-phase thing, right? While they do that, we are also trying to leverage connections with big industries like Dangote to say, okay, provide the materials at a subsidized rate for these developments.
I do wonder this community-based approach, would it work better? And I'm thinking scaling across
Yes.
Nigeria, right? When you said city, what flashed for me was that there are actually very few cities
Very
in
few
Nigeria
cities.
compared to the population.
Yes.
So we talk more, like you said, about local government areas.
Yes.
There's no reason why a state like Kaduna should have just Kaduna City, Zaria, then you talk about maybe Kafanchan.
Yes.
But that's just three.
That's just
And you're
three.
talking about a landmass of over 40,000 square
But
kilometers.
3 is enough.
Is it?
But 3 is enough.
Scale across the
The
country.
population of Kaduna is 9.8 million. The population of Kaduna is pushing towards 2 million. So already is left with 6. And that's all. The other 6 is scattered across the remaining, local government areas. But if you see how the bell curve works, the majority of people that would make the difference are on either side of the curve, on either the left or the right. So you have that number of the people that would actually make the huge difference in terms of economic change concentrated in the city. So it means that they can provide the resources that people in the rural area would not actually need to leave the rural area to come to the city for. So 3 is enough. But if we begin to have metropolitan cities, effective ones, not the chaos we have as Lagos. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Radio Now.
Don't worry. Stephen has been slandering his city since we
if
got
we begin
here.
to have functional city as organisms, right? Say we have that in Enugu, we have it in Port Harcourt, we have it in Kano, we have it in Maiduguri, we have it. You begin to see that Nigerian functions as a living organism and it works effectively. But even in Kaduna, even in the city of Kaduna, the priority of Kaduna North local government is different from that of Kaduna South local government. It's different from that of Igabi, and it's different from that of Chukun. All 4 local governments are part of the capital city, and all 4 local governments have different priorities. How do you move that city towards one common goal and vision, and take this across the 36 states of Nigeria, including Abuja, which is several municipalities?
So, because of time, what we'll do is just ask you for your final thoughts. If you want to leave us with one thing on climate change and development in Nigeria, what would that be?
I think people should seek out understanding of the issues of climate change personally. Individual contributions go a long way when it's collective. When we begin to think about ways to reduce our consumption of plastic, dispose waste more properly, use our food waste for organic compost, grow gardens in our backyards, those very, very little things contribute massively. And before you know what, our cities are a bit cleaner. There are less waste in our drainage, in our drainages. And things just begin to work in a way that you can't even understand, because everyone is making a minute contribution to the whole. And that's what I'm going to leave everyone with. See what contribution you can make as an individual in sustainable living.
You heard it from the man himself, Aaron John, talking about what contributions you can make at the small scale that will, I guess, scale up to improving life for each and every Nigerian. Our contribution is to continue to bring you conversations beyond the news, and we're doing that right here in Kaduna, where we're at Kabafest 2024.
And as we wrap up this conversation, Aaron John is the founder of the African Narrative on Climate Change. We want to say a big thank you for your time and joining us on this critical conversation. And in just a few minutes, we have another independent curator who joins us to discuss the arts in Kaduna, but she also happens to be creative director at an organization called Open Arts. They are the organizers of, yesterday was referred to as the Brother Festival of Kabafest. That's the Hausa International Book and Arts Festival. You want to stick around for this conversation. We come back in just a bit. This is Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos, coming to you live from Kaduna.
Every second and every minute, something new happens. The news breaks.
3 people at a spot, and angry mob decided to bomb.
Everyone wants to share it, but not everyone wants to dig deep. Now that's where we come in. We bring you the news and go beyond with in-depth conversations and analysis with stakeholders.
I honestly think that the federal government on its own part has
If voters or more people want to be part of that decision-making process, they need to be part.
GDP is not a good measure of development anyways. We are not there. We need to counter the narrative of the fact that our vote does not count. If your vote does not count.
We bring you the story within the story, and that's what makes us tick. We are Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos, and we go beyond the news.
The news that matters the most is the news that hits closest to home. If it touches your business, your family, your city, your schools, or your safety, we've got you covered. Everything that affects you is our concern. So, we go beyond, getting all the facts and serving you news and information you can trust.
There was 10 million liters of fuel made available at some point, which was not made available at the time because obviously it had to be brought in.
They attacked this Gayo village, Keru, and the Takalafia village yesterday. It's one of the many attacks.
Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos, beyond the news.
Calling all music and book lovers, fans of fiction and art enthusiasts, something is brewing in Kaduna.
Kabafest.
Don't miss the Kaduna Book and Art Festival special on Radio Now.
It's like a revival.
Books.
When writing The 7 Necessary Sins, did you know it would connect with women globally?
He has this new book, People Live Here. It's an amazing book.
Poetry.
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. Cancer had been at the edge of my throat.
For once the Ayiridi dies down, the next sounds you are going to be hearing is Gas Yakari.
And music.
So just do when I do, when I do.
Join Nabila and Stephen from Thursday, May 2nd to Saturday, May 4th from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos.
News and information go around every second. The ones who deliver it and how matter. We give you depth, substance from the real sources.
I made statements in that regard.
There wasn't any agreement between Bashir Machina and Ahmad Lawan.
The DPO, the divisional police officer who is on ground there, went there.
Also giving you a more human angle on the events that matter.
They are not people that live in mansions, but they are people that live within localities, and the people are afraid to.
There's so many issues there in area boys. Then we now went to.
Let's cut the convention and rather have a conversation. Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. We go beyond the news.
On air, online, and on your mobile. This is Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos.
You are listening to Nabila Usman and Stephen Imediegwu at Kabafest.
You're welcome back into the conversation. This is still the special Saturday broadcast of Now Breakfast, brought to you from Kaduna State, where we are at the Kaduna Book and Arts Festival. My name is Stephen Imediegwu, here with Nabila Usman. And together we're going to be speaking this morning with someone who is in the space, the creative space. I'm talking about a woman who works hard, puts in that careful planning to ensure that creative spaces happen for those who need to be in it. She's got the experience of creating this space for creatives, as she is the co-founder and creative director for a literary collective hub called Open Arts. We're talking about curator, program manager, public policy enthusiast, Sumaya Jae. She joins us this morning right here on Now Breakfast.
It should be said that Stephen practiced very hard to get that name right.
I did. I'm not even going to deny it. Thank you very much. That makes me feel, justified for all of the criticism I've received. And the names I've encountered here are beautiful, but they are also hard on my biased tongue. Yes. So, once, right. Oh, don't worry. You're not alone. Nabila is in those set of shoes.
I'm sorry. This man has lived in Lagos for more than 10 years,
You're
and he
really
says I'm murdering Yoruba names. He pronounces them. I take my cue from him and
Oh,
think,
dear.
he's used to the names. Then I step out, and our Yoruba colleagues say this one has been mispronouncing up and down, and I'm like, wow.
I would ask you to pronounce Abiodun's last name, but I don't want to have this fight.
Adelowore.
Okay. You
But
practiced
anyway,
forgetting
this
the
is
F.
this is a different conversation. While we ignore Steven, he's trying to drag me into the mud like him, who abuses all the names. Maya, it's such a pleasure to have you here, right? Um, Stephen has given a sense of just how many tentacles you have in the art space, the different things that you are doing with open arts, with the Hausa International Book and Arts Festival, which you guys put together once every year. You do really truly interact with the different forms of art. I'm curious as to where your bias leans. Nothing like asking a parent which is your favorite baby.
It's actually, oh, okay, Nabila, thank you very much. The pleasure is mine, actually. Um, that question is a very tricky one. I don't know if you woke up this morning and say, I have to get Sumaya and have to drag her through the mud as well. That's difficult, actually. Right now, I can't say where my bias lies. I'm just thinking about, like you said, which is your favorite child? I don't think parent might say they have their favorite child. They do have a favorite child, if we're being honest. But at the same time, they love all their children equally. And right now, putting me here on the spot and telling me to pick one.
Okay, so your official answer is that you love all your children equally.
Yes, I do.
Okay, we'll let that lie slide. It's all right. Let's talk about open arts and the literary space in Kaduna. Being from Kaduna myself, I know that it's a very organic space and everybody sort of knows everybody. You know every event that's going on, and there's quite a bit of support that happens and has been happening for years now. What's the journey been like? Because I know that open arts has also um, been very, I don't know if the word is innovative. There's certain things that certain projects that you're doing that nobody else has actually done in Kaduna. Speak to us about that.
Yeah, I agree. It's organic. I agree. It's interconnected. We all know who is doing this and who is doing that, and it's amazing. But we also all have something unique and different about what we do. For example, yeah, you said we're doing something different here. We're looking at movies. We're looking at other field that people have not looked at, because it's important to have something a bit different from others, because if we're all doing the same thing, then why not just come together under one umbrella and just do it together, instead of just, oh, this person is, for example, yes, Rufai Foundation is doing their book chat, they're doing, yeah, literary evenings, and it's book chat mostly, and then okay, we're going to do the same thing, and it's like reputation. We used to be at Yasmin Rufai Foundation. We used to give them the support they needed, and basically we were there. Sada was there when they set up, and I joined them later. And it's amazing what they've been able to achieve. I'm so proud of what they've been doing, and I'm happy with the Sasak story. Although I feel like you don't tell it enough, but yeah, but we are coming back to do something a bit different from what we've experienced at the foundation and what other people are doing, because it's important to do something different, and it's also important to do things that are going to be very, very impactful to the artists, to the community, and to us, the curators as well. Something that makes us happy, something that we feel we've adding value to the community as well.
So, in creating the sort of spaces where creatives can come and feel comfortable to do what they're good at doing, to exhibit it to anybody who wants to watch it, what sort of efforts go into that? And I ask this because being here and listening to all these conversations and meeting independent creators like yourself, has got me asking questions about how can this be replicated in other parts of Nigeria where we don't typically see art festivals, especially of the nature that we have with Kabafest. So, what sort of efforts do you put into creating safe and open spaces for creatives?
A lot of effort goes into it. There's the planning, there's the organization, and there's also the thinking out of the box. You just don't sit down and say, "Oh, I want to do this," but you also have to think about the value you're adding to. You also need to think about, okay, why am I doing this? Because sometimes we just say, "Oh, I want to do this," but do you have a good reason for wanting to do this? So you have to have a good reason to do this, and then you also have to think about what you're giving back to the community.
um I hear you there, and you're quite right. There's the communal nature of the arts is a give and take. The artist takes because you do sort of observation, the recreation, the imitation of life, and in your creation you give back to the community, allow them the opportunity to interact critically. Talk to us about the I want to talk about the generational diversity of people in Kaduna that come to your events. What do you see there? What's the trend?
Actually, I think it's open arts. We have diverse people coming in. We say our targets are young people between 18 and 35, but you see support, massive support, and people from their 60s coming in and supporting us and being there. And sometimes it's from support, and sometimes it's because they're genuinely interested in what we do. Um, it's not only young people, and especially because what we do at Open Art is actually very different, because we do try to touch a lot of things. Recently we just added the Kaduna Discourse Cycle to what we do, and Kaduna Discourse Cycle is all about people coming in. It's just like the town hall meeting that Aaron felt like we don't have it, but it's about people coming in and talking about the problems they face in Kaduna. Okay, we have this problem, and we had the first edition last month, and it was like about corruption, and we are like, okay, why are people corrupt? Why do we have this inherent need to be
Did you
corrupt?
get an
And
answer?
no, it's a host of plenty things, and yeah, but we were holding ourselves accountable, and we're all saying how we've tried to cheat the system here and there as well. I think all of us in a way are a bit
We're all
corrupt.
guilty.
It's not only our leaders that are a bit corrupt. So
Stephen is corrupt too. I agree. I agree.
so
No
yeah,
comment.
so and then this month we're going to have something for the kids. We're having children's day activities. There's going to be paint and sip for them. There's going to be readings. So we try to just touch the age gap all over the place, but mostly we think we like to believe that our targets are people between 18 and 35, but I feel like we're touching all the stratas, and if I'm being honest.
So, was that a deliberate strategy in setting up, your in curating your art? Is that a deliberate strategy to have something for everybody? And I ask this because it's not every child that is a Jean Basquiat. They don't find their talent from the diapers. At some point, at some age, oh, I have a talent for this, and then I start to do it. So, if you're looking at creating something for children as well as connecting the elders who are the living representatives of our past to the younger artist who is in the moment, is that deliberate, or is that just something that you stumbled on across on this journey?
I don't think it was organic. Like we didn't. I don't think we thought about it really. Right now that I'm sitting here and you're asking me this question and I'm thinking about it, I think it just happened. For example, the older generation, we just go to, or we have a very huge support from Professor Malum Fashi, and somehow, his generation and his, I don't know if it's a cycle or people of his age, or because some of his friends are there, people just tend to get the pull of that generation coming into our activities. And although we extend invitation because we believe that they have something to give us, it's just something that just happened out of the blue, I think, because we didn't sit down me and and say, oh, we need to bring this person, we need to bring that person. They just tend to just tune into what we do. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to ask because, and forgive me if my head is getting a little muddled. There are 1,000 creatives in Kabafest, and I've run into so many curators. But what makes your work different? What makes open spaces different from what
Open
exists?
arts.
Open arts, beg your pardon. What makes it different from any other curator or curating house that's out there?
Okay, I need to explain this to you. Okay, for open arts, it's not just about the festival for us. The festival is something we do once a year. So it's much more than the festival. It's the little things we do. It's the discussion cycle. Um is the open art leads, like it's just space. It's about space to come and be yourself. It's about the space we provide for people to heal, to discuss. Okay, I have this problem and I feel there's a solution by talking to people. The people say that a problem shared is a problem solved. So if we come together and discuss, as I like to see us as a family, anyone that comes to our space is our family, and we feel like this person is coming here to share something with us or to add a value to us. It's not about us, it's about the people that are coming in. So it's not about the festival for us, right? The festival is the big thing that we do, but it's much more than the festival. It's about the day-to-day activity that we do, and that's what matters to me. It's one of the things that I hold very, very dear to me. So yeah, it's we are different. It's not just about the festival, it's about the things that we do. But also the festival is also something that we need to look at. It's something great that we also do with the festival, because
So before you go further into it, right? Perhaps in looking at the festival, the first question is really why you decided to anchor it in Hausa.
okay, Hausa language is the second largest language spoken in Africa. I don't know if you know that. Most people don't know that. And Hausa is a very big language. Niger, Cameroon, and
Chad as well.
Chad, yeah, and even part of Mali that is very close to Sokoto State. So it's a very West African language, and it's always relegated to the past. And then you come to see that northern Nigerian people, we understand English. We use the language beautifully. You can see Nabila is one of those people with sweet British accent.
Somebody said it.
Okay.
So we do have that, but we also tend to express ourselves better in our language. It's something that we've noticed, and even yesterday when the panel in house was, you could see how gingered people were, and people wanted to contribute to the conversation, because we do have the English language, yeah, but I feel some people feel more comfortable speaking in the language. But for us, it's not actually even about the language, it's about connecting to the language, because we feel at most as people speak the language, we're losing touch with the language. For example, if you leave me with this mic and you tell me, Smoya, speak in Hausa for the next 5 minutes, you can't put English, you're putting me on the spot. Actually, I cannot do that.
That's how we created Ingausa.
So
English and Hausa.
yes, so Ingausa is actually a medium. Most Hausa speakers are very, very comfortable in speaking. That's the combination of English
the
and
Yorubas
Hausa.
have that too. Yoruba English. That's what they call it.
So it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful use of language that people use the language, their mother tongue, and then the English language. So we're using it as a tool because it has been given to us. We have to use it, but also we have to remember where we are coming from. And so let's not get lost. Let's not get lost of and forget who we are or where we're coming from. Because if we continue like this, in another 100 years, like Nabila will see, I don't think there'll be people that speak Hausa, because people are losing their language. Actually, languages are dying. English is taking over the world. So yeah, this is the little we are doing to preserve the language and the culture and the tradition.
That's the first time I'm hearing anybody express fear about the Hausa language going out of.
In 100 years, I didn't say tomorrow.
No, like genuinely, because as an Igbo man, I've heard it said that the Igbo language will become extinct in 50 years, and it's a valid point. I still want to talk about the open art space. You have a unique space. Most of the other curators that I've listened to or spoken to or visited usually have this open space that's designed for visitors to come and go, but what you have is different. I'm looking at the description. It's a two-room flat behind the main house. You exhibit over 20 artworks. You've got 300 books of study. Was there a conscious effort in choosing something that almost gives you the feeling of home?
Feeling of home, okay, was it conscious? Yes, it was. It was deliberate. We were thinking about, actually, when we set up, and it's still part of the plan. We haven't actually executed it yet. Was to have residency for artists, have artists come in, spend 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and just create something and go home. And because we feel there's no enough space for artists and creatives to come and just do their work, it's actually very difficult for creatives to have a space to do their work. there's always something coming in. And for example, I'm creative, and finding that time and space to say, oh, I'm going to dictate this time to my craft is actually very difficult. So when we set up that place, we're like, okay, we're going to do residencies, and for one or two reasons we've not been able to do that, but it's something that is still in the pipeline, something that we still want to do in the close future.
Let's talk about you and your work as a curator. What form of art or what direction would you say is generally lacking in curated art spaces that you, maybe it's really a question of which type of art, which form of art you focus on the most? And I don't know whether that ties into which ones are the least exposed or the least exhibited, whether in northern Nigeria or across the country.
That's a tricky question. Let me see. Okay, for my practice, actually, my creation is a social commentary. Some people will say art is for art's sake, but I feel art is much more than for just art's sake. It's for social change. It's a mirror to the society. It's making people change. It's be making people feel something. And when I go into curation, I'm thinking about the voices that I feel like have been marginalized. When I created an exhibition, it's mostly about women spaces. It's about healing, and that's how I go into the space. That's how I think about the space. And funny, when you say about, I can't speak for others. I can't speak about what is lacking in the space. I can speak about my own story and my view that I'm bringing to the space. I feel we all have, like Aisha yesterday said, we all have something to contribute, and each person have something to contribute to the space, and it doesn't matter that I'm doing it. Somebody else will also come with a different point of view and a different story, which is actually very, very valid. And it's very important to have these spaces and these conversations, because it makes the world less violent. It makes us love, because it's one of the things that we like. Everybody's just all over his head, and you don't put yourself into other person's shoes. And with exhibitions and stories, we tend to put ourselves in the other person's shoes, and like, what, yeah. And it's one of the exhibition I did, it's in her shoes. It's part of the On Her Terms exhibition, and it was for a Women's Day, and I made the guys wear high heels and stand in the corner and make them listen to some beautiful poetry by Hawasali and Deborah Jensen. It was beautiful, and yeah, it's just like, so that they understand where it pinches, they had to wear some high heels. So yeah, so it's my own.
You've given me an idea. Steven's gonna
No,
come to work in 6-inch heels.
No, I can't drive in 6-inch heels. If there were 3-inch heels, I would consider them.
If
But
a
6
woman
inches,
can
no.
do it,
That's
man
not the way.
can.
That's not the way it
Apparently, a
goes.
man can't.
No, that's not
what
the way
he's
the
saying.
saying goes. What a man can do, a woman can do better. Please, let's not shift the goalpost right now. So, I want to talk. I'm sorry, I'm apologizing, but it will be done. Favorites again. Um, in the art pieces that you curate, is there your personal favorite? I was good, or personal bias, because I feel like curators and artists are scared of the word favorite. But do you have a personal signature? That's the word. When it comes to the pieces that you really look out for, that you feel shine the brightest.
Okay. If yeah, I agree. Actually, we are subjective, if I'm being honest. Especially in the art field, all of us are subjective. We all believe we have the greatest idea. We all believe that we have best, the best things, and we have the best things to say, and we want to be listened to. We need to be heard. But for me, it's not just about the aesthetics. I love beautiful things. I love to see
Who
beauty, but
doesn't?
but I also love stories, and they are one of the things that motivate me. So when I sit down, I'm like, what is this telling me? What is this art piece telling me? And it's what's draw me to the artwork. For example, Imran Stilly, all of us have that tote bag, and you're like, oh my god, the colors are bold, and then you're looking at the woman inside, or the man, depending on what you got, and then the books. So, and you can actually, it's aesthetically pleasing, but you can also tell a story from it. So those are the kind of artworks that actually pull me to.
Vibrant color, um
And stories,
and
beautiful,
stories, of
yes.
course, and stories. I want to talk about the stories that come out of the north. Personally, I find the story of Queen Amina of Zazao to be, I guess, and please forgive me, but I feel like it's the greatest northern story ever. because of how it challenges what we believe. It also challenges the society that we live in today. I mean, a woman ruling all of the North, doing everything that we say is the preserve of the man, warrior, leader, politician, an all-round bad guy. It has to be said. But those stories don't seem to have the same reach that stories about other conquerors, it has to be said, seems to have. It doesn't seem to have the same hold on our imagination that the other stories have. Do you occasionally find yourself getting bogged down with a need to, I guess, go back in time and tell the truth, tell that story?
Yes. I believe so. And for the Queen of, I mean, I think it's most about sensationalism. People love stories that are sensational. Oh, you see, those northern people. Somebody said that when they think about northerners, they don't think about people that can speak good English and talk
Ridiculous.
yo. Somebody told me, oh, but I don't want to drag us to that. So it's one of the biases that we experience, and people are pushing out the story, say, okay, I mean, I did this, so that people will look at us differently. But we do have great stories, yeah. And I'm actually, it's I have this itch to tell great stories. For example, there is this person called Nagamas Adudangwari. They said that he used his tongue to do a turban when he's about to go to war, and nobody knows about him. And it's a story. It's somebody that actually really fascinated me, because my grandmother would tell me that Nagamas Adudangwari fought with her father, who is like my great grandfather, and that Nagamas wanted to kill him, but he one thing later another, he came to kill him and he was not able to kill him, but because I think something made him change his mind, because he could have killed my great grandfather. And these are the stories we don't tell. And there is this thing about where my mother is from. My mother is from Kebbi State, and they have these great warriors and they have this great tradition that is very removed from the houses, and it's something that have not been told, and we are losing it actually. And that they used to have this great walls, because people in Zulu area, they had never been conquered. The jihadists were there, but they were never able to conquer them. The white people were never able to conquer those people. They had great walls around their cities, and nobody had ever been able to breach those walls, and the walls are now down and nobody have heard about them. And it's something that makes me want, you people need to know about these people.
Right.
These people have been amazing people. People will say that the Amfodia has did this, Amfodia did that, did Amfodia did jihad, Amfodia jihad was biased and he killed other people, but he was not able to breach everywhere, even in northern Nigeria. So
He
yeah,
had
and
his
it's
own
and
Waterloo.
Kebbi was very close to Sokoto. Basically, they're actually the same region. So what
So,
are you saying?
all I'm hearing from you is that we should expect his story soon.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I'll put
No, we
myself
should.
to
You've got
We're
to
holding you
commit
to this one.
yourself.
We're holding you to this one.
So perhaps this is actually a great place to plug in the question of what to expect next from Sumaya Jae, from Open Arts, from the maybe you can give us some insight into what the Hausa International Book and Arts Festival will be this year. Give us the expo.
I'll just tell you where it's going to be. I love that our festival is not just plugged in one place. And the last two first edition was in Kaduna, but the third one was in Kano, and the fourth one will be in Abuja. And for open arts, we're looking into publication, because we feel we don't have enough stories from our own people, especially women. So we are hoping by next year we'll be able to publish 10 northern Nigerian writers. For me, I'm actually looking at a lot of things, and sometimes I feel like it's just my ADHD brain induced dreams, but also because I don't know if you do, the ADHD tends to just keep dreaming about things and project, and then we don't tend to go through them. And I'm trying. I hopefully this time around I'm going to do it. But I'm looking at film. I want to badly, and I feel I have to do it. I badly want to produce a very short film, and I'm going to be in it. It's the urge is there, and I have to do that. And so it's one of the things that I'm looking at, and also the book. I have to tell those stories. It's sad we're losing people from that generation. We have great stories, and we don't tell them, and we're losing them. And it's painful, especially because my grandmother is at the ICU right now. She's sick, and she's an inspiring woman. She had been through a lot of things, and I've been able to tap into her story because I live with her here in Katy. And she's this woman that have experienced British role. She has been in the barracks. She was the wife of the soldier. They've experienced the wars, and not really. Her brother experienced the Second World War, but she was not able to experience the Second World War. But she was maybe little then. So it's all of these things that I feel like we should tell. The stories that we are forgetting, and we need to remember, because we need to remember who we are to understand where we are going to.
I mean, it goes without saying, we do wish your family well.
Thank
and
you.
We are looking forward to the promises you've just made live on air.
Yes. That's why I'm putting them out here,
There
so
you
that
have
I have to, because I have told all of you listeners that I'm going to, so I have no option but to do it.
We'll hold you to it. Thank you so much for joining us in Conversation, Sumaya.
Thank you. This was wonderful. I totally enjoyed myself.
Truly. We are speaking. We just finished speaking with the one and only Sumaya Jae, the creative director and co-founder of the literary collective hub called Open Arts Spaces. Our conversations, as always, will continue. This is the special Saturday broadcast of Now Breakfast, coming to you live from Kaduna, and more specifically, the Kaduna Book and Arts Festival, Kabafest 2024. I'm Stephen Imediegwu here with Nabila Usman. Do stay with us.
Be a part of our online community on Facebook. Like our page on www.facebook.com/This Is Radio Now to join every conversation on air and get up-to-date news information on the go.
News and information go around every second. The ones who deliver it and how matter. We give you depth, substance from the real sources.
I made statements to that regard.
There wasn't any agreement between Bashir Machina and Ahmad Lawan.
DPO, the divisional police officer who is on ground there, went there.
Also giving you a more human angle on the events that matter.
They are not people that live in mansions, but they are people that live within localities, and the people are afraid.
We had so many issues there in area boys. Then we now went to.
Let's cut the convention and rather have a conversation. Radio Now 95.3 FM, Lagos. We go beyond the news.
Outside of the conversation, we could have done that.
The news that matters the most is the news that hits closest to home. If it touches your business, your family, your city, your schools, or your safety, we've got you covered. Everything that affects you is our concern. So we go beyond, getting all the facts and serving you news and information you can trust.
There was 10 million liters of fuel made available at some point, which was not made available at the time because obviously it had to be brought in.
The attack this Gayo village, Kebu, and the Takalafia village yesterday is one of the many attacks.
Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos, beyond the news.
Connect with us now via our social media channels. Facebook.com/Radio Now 953 FM.
We're on Twitter too. Connect with us there and get involved.
At Radio Now 953 FM. 953 FM. Like what we do? Share it on your socials and tell everyone.
Want to see some more of us? Head over and meet us on Instagram
at Radio Now 953 FM. Get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.
Calling all music and book lovers, fans of fiction and art enthusiasts. Something is brewing in Kaduna.
Kabafest.
Don't miss the Kaduna Book and Art Festival special on Radio Now.
It's like a revival.
Books.
When writing The 7 Necessary Sins, did you know it would connect with women globally?
He has this new book, People Live Here. It's an amazing book.
Poetry.
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. Cancer had been at the edge of my throat.
For once the Ayiridi dies down, the next sound you are going to be hearing is Gas Yakari.
And music.
So just do what I do when I do.
Join Nabila and Stephen from Thursday, May 2nd to Saturday, May 4th from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Radio Now 95.3 FM, Lagos.
On air, online, and on your mobile. This is Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos.
You are listening to Nabila Usman and Stephen Imediegwu at Kabafest.
Welcome back. You're still listening to Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos, live from Kaduna City. We're here at the Kaduna Book and Arts Festival 2024 talking about Kabafest. My name's Nabila Usman with my co-host Stephen Imediegwu, and this is day 3 of our Kabafest special. It also happens to be the final day of the festival. We've had conversations across the board from poets, from performers, from filmmakers, to policymakers, to social commentators, culture critics, curators. There's a lot that we've discussed in the last 3 days that gives you a sense of just how wide-ranging the impact of the arts is on the identity of Nigeria. Now, in a few minutes, we will have another guest in conversation with us. But before then, we would like to give you a sense of what festival goers had to say about their experience of Kabafest. The team went out into the festival grounds, and we got to hear from a couple of people, actually about 3 people here. So take a listen.
My name is Clement Colors, also known as the Rainbow Man. Yes, I'm an artist. I came here as a guest. This is Kabafest, and in fact, this is not the first edition, but this particular edition is just so amazing. I love it. You can even see it for yourself. You can see the way people are happy also. I love the experience. To be sincere, to be honest, I love the experience. Everything is sweet.
This is Now Breakfast at the Kaduna Book and Arts Festival.
My name is Fafadum.
Where are you from?
I'm from Kaduna State.
Oh, interesting. So, is this your first time attending Kabafest?
No, it's not. This is my second time actually.
So, how has the experience been so far?
It has actually been mind blowing. Like you get to meet like amazing people, and I'm not using the word loosely. Like really, really phenomenal people that are doing like good work, and then some of the work that I also want to do myself. So it's interesting. It's amazing.
Oh, so why did you come back a second time?
Because I had fun the first time.
Yay!
My name is Sadiq Bashir. I'm from Kaduna here. Yeah, actually, it's my first time I've been hearing about Kabafest. So this time around, I said, let me come and experience what Kabafest is all about. It's a very nice, if I can say, event because I've experienced a lot of things. Though I came late, but actually I've seen so many things. I've experienced. For example, like the Hausa discussion panel that we just had, it's a very, very, very sensational actually, because that session was kind of hot. That's why most of the people enjoyed it. Actually, if it's going to happen maybe next year, by the grace of God, I'll definitely be here.
This is Now Breakfast at the Kaduna Book and Arts Festival.
My name is Akwoga. I'm from Kogi State, but I'm based in Kaduna. Yeah, born and brought up in Kaduna, actually. So this is actually my first time, and I'm happy being here. I think it has been great, enlightening, informative. Yeah, because the kind of conversation that is being held there, I think is top-notch. Yes, and a lot of issues have been dissected. Okay, for me, I think the people that are talking here are very expressive. Perhaps because of the strength of the platform. Okay, so that has given them that, I would say the boldness, okay, or the encouragement for them to actually look at some of the issues and the way they are looking at it. They are actually very sincere, okay, very courageous about the kind of discussions that they are having here. And for me, these are the kind of things we should be doing, or doing more rather, okay, and I believe that so many states need to replicate what is happening at Kabafest.
You are listening to the Radio Now Kabafest special live from Kaduna City.
On air, online, and on your mobile. This is Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos.
You are listening to Nabila Usman and Stephen Imediegwu at Kabafest.
Welcome back. You're still listening to Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. Multiple specials here. A Saturday special, a Kabafest special. On Now Breakfast, we're coming to you live from the festival grounds of the Kaduna Book and Arts Festival in Kaduna State. My name's Nabila Usman, here with my co-host
Stephen Imediegwu.
And together, we've been in conversations with creative minds really across the board. You've just heard from festival goers. I'm particularly interested in how they give you a sense of the melting pot that is Kaduna. We continue to talk about Lagos being a melting pot every time you want to talk on a lightning rod in the country, but Kaduna is very much that as well.
It is. And I would say this lightning rod may have attracted me to it. The city has been beautiful. It's been enjoyable for the last few days that we've been here. And strangely enough, I find myself wishing that the festival was lasting 2 weeks as against 4 days, so I can spend some more time exploring this city. I do think that there's a lot to see here, including the cuisine. Today will be the day when I will actually be out and about enjoying the local Kaduna cuisine. I'm a little disappointed in Nabila because she knows the hot spots, but it took me placing calls to my sources to find out where I could actually find
There's
proper
something they
bako.
say, who your disappointment, Eb?
Okay, no Epiabi.
No.
It's all right. My stomach will be helped by my disappointment this morning, as when we go off air, I will be going into town, finding out all those spots that Nabila likes to go to when she's not
Yeah,
working.
you're exposing your middle name as Chop Chop.
Look, it matters not. Have you had ram suya lately? You refuse to tell me about ram suya. That is a grudge I will hold against you, Nabila. Come on, we're in Kaduna. Where's the ram suya?
It's how you're a Nigerian, born and raised in Nigeria, and you're here accusing me. I've had things like ofensala, I've had banga soup, I've had fisherman soup. What's your excuse?
You're my excuse. That we got here, it's been 3 days, and I haven't seen a whiff. I haven't even smelt the what's the yaji that goes on to ram suya. It breaks my heart. It really does. But speaking about heartbreak, my heart will be mended. Perhaps not by the next piece that you're going to listen to this morning, but definitely to some extent. Poetry has a way of expressing the deep thoughts that we go through. It has a way of unearthing the pains that we normally would not be able to speak of. And in our conversations this week, we've heard a number of poets talk about this. We're going to be playing you two pieces from Richard Ali. He is a poet who is part of the lineup at Kabafest 2024. The first poem that you're going to be listening to is a poem that he says he wrote when he was out of Nigeria in another African nation. Broken Radios. I beg your pardon. This one is a poem that talks about his experience with, I guess, protest and social unrest, talking about the Occupy Nigeria protests of a few years ago. This is Broken Radios and Blood by Richard Ali. Do take a listen.
Broken Radios and Blood by Richard Ali, from the anguish and vigilance of teens. Contorted like Christ in Mary's arms, the children, baton-charged and tear-gassed, make it home, become tears, merge with image and meat. They dared to flower and were doomed, they dared, outrageous as roses on a grey sea, were doomed, for their white petals, their love for fragile country. Jubilee Square is now Jerusalem bereft, strewn with pure water sachets, broken radios, unclaimed mats, blood. The curtain is rent now. The country rests in peace.
You are listening to Nabila Usman and Stephen Imediegwu at Kabafest.
Still talking about the arts, still talking about poetry's ability to break your heart. We have one more by Richard Ali. Now, these are two poems off of his his latest book, which is exhibited here at Kabafest 2024. This one is titled Ash, and I do hope that as you take a listen, it touches a part of you that you might think is unreachable.
And by the way, the collection of poems is titled The Anguish and Vigilance of Things. Here's Ash by Richard Ali.
This is the poem Ash by Richard Ali, from the anguish and vigilance of things. I love you as ash, I say. Each speck of me teases a pore of your skin, hurts woman brown, as ants across earth. My desire invades you. Nothing is left but the stare of your eyes. Eyes are pathways, I've seen enough. Truth is but the echo of dreams. Flecks of arms, taste of tongue, the way you lay in my bed are all truths. Eyes are doorways. The roads are old, the lines are ancient, all lead to this Kampala of tucked hills hiding secrets. You despair the end of fire, I say, ash is potent too. Ash is the dream of wood that cannot be burned.
You are listening to Nabila Usman and Stephen Imediegwu at Kabafest.
Richard Ali reading from his collection of poetry, The Anguish and Vigilance of Things, this particular piece called Ash. I guess we have the pleasure of showing you the other side of Richard. It's supposed to be a sensitive side, but you can hear there where he's talking about protests, he's talking about social issues. So perhaps he really is a rabble rouser through and through. In a few minutes here on the Kabafest special, we've got a performance poet, a calligrapher, an all-around good guy. He joins us on stage in a moment, right, to discuss his art, and perhaps we'll get a sense of his poetry as well. Stick around. This is Now Breakfast on Radio Now 95.3 FM, Lagos.
Every second and every minute, something new happens. The news breaks.
People at a spot and angry mob decided to bomb.
Everyone wants to share it, but not everyone wants to dig deep. Now that's where we come in. We bring you the news and go beyond with in-depth conversations and analysis with stakeholders.
I honestly think that the federal government on its own part has
if voters or more people want to be part of that decision-making process, they need to be part.
GDP is not a good measure of development anyways. We're not there. We need to counter the narrative of the fact that that vote does not count. If your vote does not count.
We bring you the story within the story. And that's what makes us tick. We are Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos, and we go beyond the news. Connect with us now via our social media channels. Facebook.com/Radio Now 953 FM.
We're on Twitter too. Connect with us there and get involved.
At Radio Now 953 FM. 953 FM. Like what we do? Share it on your socials and tell everyone.
Want to see some more of us? Head over and meet us on Instagram
at Radio Now 953 FM. Get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.
on air, online, and on your mobile. This is Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos.
You are listening to Nabila Usman and Stephen Imediegwu at Kabafest.
Welcome back. This is Now Breakfast here on Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. We're coming to you live from Kaduna State at the Kaduna Book and Arts Festival 2024. Now, we do have someone who has joined us for a conversation around calligraphy, which is another form of creativity that is not rarely spoken of. It's never spoken of because people don't think about it. I'm the person introducing our guest because Stephen is afraid that not only will he bite his tongue, he might actually have to toss it into the river or something.
And you say you're my friend.
I never said that, ever.
Okay.
Joining us on stage is Kalb Salim Muhammad. He happens to be a performance poet and a calligrapher, amongst other things. I prefer to call him an all-round good guy. Even though, yes, he is an all-round good guy. He gives you that that vibe. And if you go to YouTube, by the way, Radio Now Studio, you get a sense of what I'm talking about. And maybe you and I will be like, yeah, it's true. That guy. Hi, Kalb Salim. Welcome.
Hi, Nabila. Thank you very much for having me. I
I don't know where the all around good guy is. Don't I look like I'm dangerous?
Gengelus. Welcome. It's
Thank
good
you
to
for
have
having
you
me.
with us. We'll get Stephen to pronounce your name later.
Okay. Oh, just so you know, it's a normal thing. Even Hausa people or whoever, they usually have a hard time pronouncing my name, so it's not
I
just
knew
you.
I liked you for some reason. Thank you very much for that.
Actually, this gives us the opportunity to spell it because anyone who hears it probably can't spell it. So it's QALBSALEEM. And there you have it. You've just learned a new name.
They did. What is more interesting about it is the meaning to the name itself.
Okay.
It means one that has a sound heart. So Qalb is heart and Salim is pure or sound.
Wow.
Stephen is.
No,
You're
look,
taking the
I'm
breath
telling
out
you,
of his lungs.
that's the sort of name that you'd give to your kid and then slap on an Igbo surname at the end of it and just unleash that child into the world and say, go and explain yourself.
So I mean, I'm glad that we started with names. We've gone into that. It's an Arabic name, so let's not make it Hausa, just in case people think that that's the case.
Yes.
Let's talk about your calligraphy. Maybe we should just ask you, what is calligraphy?
I see. So a lot of times the thoughts, if people have heard about calligraphy, what people usually think is it's just writing, like fancy writing, which I would say to some extent it is. But like every other form of art, there's always more to it than meets the eye. It's a discipline. With every discipline, there is practice. There are rules to follow, and there are things that you have to put in place for that to be considered tangible. So calligraphy is a form of art. It's a form of writing that includes both technical aspects and also the art. The science aspect of things.
I'm interested in the science part. What's the science in calligraphy?
In the sense that whatever it is that you're trying to do, there's always the need to, maybe not science history. Yes. So it's something that in the past and currently, be it through digital media or through whatever type of media that we try to document what we do. So calligraphy is a form of art that also came out of that.
So let me take it up from here and ask, how did you get into calligraphy? I mean, I know it's out there in terms of it being an art form, but it's not the regular, it's not common. It's not an easy art form to get into by any chance. It sounds precise. How did you get involved with this?
Well, my background stem from architecture.
Ah.
So I studied architecture, and it is through that I discovered calligraphy. Interestingly enough, my father also did some calligraphy in his earlier days, and but then when I came of age, I knew about it. It wasn't like, okay, it was something of the past for him. So it was something I just drew inspiration from and started finding ways to do them on my own. Interestingly enough, I obviously there are calligraphers, but most of the calligraphers that I know, be it from Kano or the ones I've met in Nigeria, mostly stick to, everybody tries to maybe make something out of their vocation just so they could make money and, eat and whatnot. So it was mostly surrounded around certificate writing and this, and I am like, no, I know that the world has moved on from this, and I am going to make sure that whatever it is that I'm going to do, it's not going to be writing certificates.
And that allows us to talk about what it is you do. You do your calligraphy, it's essentially Arabic.
Mhm.
Why? I mean, you've just said why you don't want to do the certificate
Yes.
bit. Why is it Arabic?
Arabic in the sense that, one, I'm a Muslim, which is tied to why my name is what it is, and also the fact that Arabic is it used to be it's the primary form of communication for what do you call it in 16th century, before colonialism and whatnot. Even the Hausa, the Yoruba, Swahili all used Arabic as a form of communication, as a form of documentation. So it's more like I'm predominantly known for English calligraphy, but my Arabic calligraphy stands out more because I try to draw inspirations from my culture and my backgrounds and all of the things that interconnect in that. So, which is why you also think Arabic, because that is what stands out for you.
So it seems to me like a very nuanced art. It's in that rare air where you have to be, you have to properly appreciate it because of how much effort goes into it. And I'm wondering if there is a way for calligraphy to be, I guess, introduced to the regular art lover or art, the person who visits exhibitions. How do you get it? And when I say introduced to, I mean like to give it a proper appreciation of the art form. How do you get the regular art goer to stumble on your work and go, wow, this is beautiful?
It's like you mentioned, it's through exhibitions and on Instagram. If you search my name, you'll find it, be it as calligraphy, which is a combination of calb and calligraphy. So calligraphy.
Calligraphy.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I usually use that as my primary form of as my primary channel of sharing my work, and also exhibitions and things like that.
So I do have to follow up with this one because I know that artists are always there for the soul, the beauty, the expression. But is calligraphy lucrative? I'm sorry, I'm a journalist.
No.
We occasionally do brutal questions.
I actually like the question. I would say yes, it is. Being a pioneer in the industry of the whole calligraphy thing, I've been able to create online courses.
Oh wow!
To teach, because I know that it's something that is not very known, and I can only reach as much people as I can alone. So I may not be in Maiduguri, I may not be in Lagos, right? Do you have something to say?
Yeah, go on.
Okay. So I may not be in Maiduguri, I may not be in Lagos. I have students all over the country, and I cannot. Currently, I don't think I'm able to host in-person workshops on the scale that I want them to. So, in what ways do I reach people by cutting down the barriers that are in between us?
Right.
So I have students in Lagos, I have them in Kaduna, I have them in Maiduguri, I have them all over the country, really. So it's through that. Someone may not hear of calligraphy through me, but they have heard it through other people, and it has generated revenue for me personally, because my course sells for 70,000 per person, and for every, I think we've had 15 to 20 cohort has about 15 to 20 people. So
Okay.
it's lucrative in that aspect, and in the sense that people also use it for several other things, like creating frames, creating artwork, which is part of the things that I do too.
Right.
So
Gold Salim, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank thank you very much for having me.
Our guest on the conversation, a calligrapher, a poet, is a crown good guy, joining us that we use the takeoff point for that conversation. All right, up there now 95.3 F. What rounds is. This is now
Every second, something news breaks.
3 people at a spot, and angry mob decided to burn.
Everyone wants to share it. Now that's where we can contradict. We bring you the news and go beyond with in-depth conversations and analysis with stakeholders.
If voters want to be
of development anyways. We're not there. We counter the narrative of the fact that who does not come. If you are who does not come.
We bring you the story within the story. And that's 5.3 FM Lagos. And we go.
Yeah, listen.
Come back from Kaduna State, where it's live Kaduna Book and Arts Festival. We've talked to everybody who has been up in front of you, but we can't leave you without letting you know what to look forward to at Kabafest today.
His lineup is none other than Radio Now's Kadria Ahmed, who's modern religion. You definitely want to catch that conversation she has on that panel. And still, I'm excited. Can you tell I'm excited?
I can.
But still coming up today, however, Inu, who will be screening. And earlier today, we spoke with the founder of the African Narrative on Climate Conversation in northern Nigeria, Aaron John. You definitely want to catch that. Without creativity, that's reading The Incredible Dreams of Garba.
Look, that title alone has me peaked. I want to know what this is about.
And yes, don't worry, you catch that conversation.
For sure.
Making a case for poetry is also a panel discussion that will be words here, the On Now Breakfast. These are the conversations to catch. Days of scintillating conversations. I don't use that word typically.
Stephen Imediegwu.
And this is now Down 5. Next is Borderline here on Radio Now.
The news that matters the most is still, if it's your city, your schools, or your safety, we've got to confess you. We go beyond getting all the facts and serving you news and information you can trust.
There was 10 million leads, which was not made available at the time because obviously it had to be brought in.
Alafia villages today is one of the main ones.
Radio Now 95.3.
Fans of fiction and art enthusiasts. Kaduna.
Kabafest. Kabafest.
Art Festival.
It's like a revival.